Chapter 21 Arrival of Hinata in Tempest. The following day after Rimuru proposed to Milim, every citizen of Tempest celebrated their engagement with a huge feast which was organized by Rimuru. Milim had a very happy expression and could not wait to go and brag to the other demon lords about her engagement. The celebration lasted for a day, with everyone eating and having a good time with each other. Now, it was the day after the celebration. Everyone was off to perform their duties since a great trouble will be happening in Tempest soon. As for Milim, she was currently off to her nation to inform Fry and Carrion on what transpired after the engagement feast. After Milim left, it was afternoon when Rimuru received a thought message from Soai, informing him that Hinata had just left her nation and is heading to the direction of the Jura forest with 5 of her knights. He was slightly worried about the news, but he composed himself after some time passed. As I am now, I don't see myself losing to Hinata in a fight. But I don't want to hurt her either because she is Shizu's student. I'll wait and see what she wants, and if she is hostile, then I will have no choice but to put her down. Though, I won't kill her, Rimuru thought to himself. Currently, things were not looking good for them and many plans were going off script. Like in Kingdom of Falmouth, the new King Edward has made his intention known that he does not wish to uphold the war tight and is going to declare another massive war with Tempest. He claims that the new demon lord has summoned a greater demon and is using him to manipulate the former king. This was shown after a viral video was released about how the demon killed Archbishop Rahim. Diablo volunteered to go to Falmouth to resolve this issue himself. And now, Hinata is moving to Tempest with 5 of her knights, and they are all equipped like they are going to war. Rimuru wants to believe that she does not want conflict with them, but if she shows any hostility, he won't hesitate to do what must be done for the sake of his nation. Well, nothing I can do about it now. Hey Seal, this whole situation looks suspicious. Do you have any idea if someone is behind all this? Rimuru thought. Answer. It is 100% believed that someone is manipulating the new king of Falmouth, and the same person is the one who is leading Hinata to be hostile with us. The individual name is unknown, but with more information, I should be able to narrow him down. Well, that was what I was expecting. If I fight Hinata, do you think that I might lose? The chances of the individual named Hinata emerging victorious over you is -1,000 in a billion chances. Rimuru had a deadpan expression. I really need to stop underestimating myself. I sometimes forget how strong I have gotten. Good thing I have Seal here to always remind me. Rimuru contacted Soai, how long will it take Hinata to reach Tempest? With the speed they are moving, it will take them 3 days to reach us, Lord Rimuru, Soai answered. That's good. Keep monitoring them for me, Rimuru said before he ended the thought communication. He left his office to prepare for Hinata arrival. It has been 2 days since Hinata set out to meet with Rimuru. Hinata was originally going to go to Tempest alone, but on her way to Tempest, she met her fellow knights who insisted on coming with her. The knights consisted of Arnaud, Bacchus, Lytus, Fritz and Serre. Serre wanted to come because he has something he wanted to confirm when he meets Demon Lord Rimuru face to face. Hinata had some objection to their arrival, but she relented after they managed to convince her that having backup was a wise idea. You'll also like. Now they are moving to the Jura forest, but they had to make some stops on the town they passed through. Everywhere they go, everyone they met on the road or in towns seems to talk about the new demon lord and his supposed accession to a true dragon like he is some kind of god. Recently, there has been a widespread rumor that the new demon lord Rimuru Tempest has proposed to demon lord Milim Nava. The knights could not believe their ear when they heard this rumor. The new demon lord Rimuru was bad enough, now they have to deal with demon lord Milim as well. Things were not looking good for them, not at all. As for Hinata, this only confirmed what Luminous had told her about Rimuru's relationship with Milim. Currently, Hinata and her fellow knights were in an inn they rented in a town close to Tempest. They all gathered around to discuss what they learned about the whole situation concerning Demon Lord Rimuru. Now that you all have heard the rumors, I would like to hear your thoughts, Hinata began. To be honest, I am certainly having second thoughts on the intention of Demon Lord Rimuru, Arnod said. Yeah, it is very strange. A demon lord who goes out of his way to ensure that human towns are protected is just strange. Everyone seems to hold him in high regard. Some even worship him like a god, and this are just the small town who are benefiting from the goods of his nation. The countries that actually have an alliance with them are almost kissing the ground, Demon Lord Rimuru works, Lyda said. And what is this rumor about Demon Lord Rimuru proposing to Demon Lord Milim Nava? Anyone else finds it strange? Arnaud asked. Yeah, I have the same thought as you. Demon lords are not enemy towards themselves, but two demon lords being in a relationship with each other has never happened throughout history. Not to mention that it is with the destroyer Milim Nava herself, Bacchus said. To be honest, I always thought that Demon Lord Milim was the epitome of destruction herself that none are allowed to gaze at. How did Demon Lord Rimuru manage to charm her? Fritz asked. I have no idea. Inasmuch as I hate to admit it, Demon Lord Rimuru is just amazing. Look at all he has accomplished in just 2 years. He managed to do something that we have not been able to do in a short amount of time, Lydas said. Have you gone mad, Lydas? Do not sing praises to this newbie demon lord, Bacchus shouted at Lydas. Bacchus, Lydas is right. Arnaud said. But... Bacchus tried to say, but Ser stopped him. I am not going to hide the obvious. Demon Lord Rimuru is a good leader, and it shows with the public opinion about him. Now we need to figure out how to handle it. Just to clarify something for all of you. If Demon Lord Rimuru becomes hostile with us, we would not only face him, but we will also be facing Storm Dragon Veldora, Demon Lord Milim Nava, and all his subordinates who are said to be A+level monsters. We are badly outnumbered, and Demon Lord Rimuru was said to have wiped out Falmouth army of 20,000 before his accession to a true dragon. This shows that he has grown considerably stronger than he was before. We need to plan carefully on what the best course of action is before we proceed, Ser said to them. Everyone looked at Ser like he has grown another head. To think that the prideful Ser will ever acknowledge their own weakness like this. Hinata looked at him. You've changed, Ser. Is there a reason that brought this change? No reason. I just looked at the bigger picture in all this and thinking of a way for us to survive this encounter, Ser said to her. Well, with all the rumors about this new demon Lord Rimuru, I don't think that he is the type to wage war out of penny grudge. Though we have to be careful when dealing with him, Lyda said. Like I said, I don't plan to fight with him. I only want to apologize for how I tried to kill him before, but if he still wants to kill me, then I will make sure that his anger ends with my life, Hinata said to them with conviction. All the knights acknowledge Hinata's resolve. They vowed to do everything in their power to come out victorious in the fight. The following day, Hinata and her knights resumed their march towards Tempest. If everything goes according to plan, they should arrive at Tempest by the afternoon. They were moving in the new constructed road of the Jura forest. They met a few security hobgoblins on the way, but it seems they did not recognize who they were. Their opinion of Rimuru after seeing the new roads of the Jura forest grew in a more positive light. All of a sudden, Hinata received a thought message from one of her knights back in Lobilius. Lady Hinata, we have a problem. What is the matter? Hinata asked in haste. It's the 7 days clergy. They are planning to. The message suddenly cut itself. Hinata tried to reconnect to the person that contacted her, but she couldn't. She immediately contacted the Holy Emperor Louis to know what is going on. She connected with him. Hinata, this is a very bad time to contact me. Hinata was even more confused. Has something happened? Yes, something big. Demon Lord Milim has crashed into our holy sanctuary and is demanding for Luminous to come out or she will destroy the nation. From her actions, she is not joking about her threat. Hinata could not hide the dread that came to her face from her fellow knights who were watching her expression. Why is she attacking us? We haven't done anything to her. Believe me, I'm just as lost as you. She shouted something about the paladins declaring war against the Jura Forest, and she wants to know why Luminous is picking a fight with her beloved. She has already killed almost all the knights that tried to fight her, and she threatens to destroy us all if Luminous doesn't show up. Hinata didn't know what to do. She made a choice to quickly return and assist Luminous. Louis, I'm coming back immediately. Please hold out until I do. Hope you get here in time because Lady Luminous has now engaged Milim in a fight. She is at a disadvantage and will need all the backup she can get. I'm coming, Hinata said to him. I will try to assist her as you. The link cut off, followed by a thankful pain to Hinata. Hinata looked up and saw a heavy barrier has surrounded the entire Jura Forest. Her knights looked at her with concern. What's the matter, Lady Hinata? Arnaud asked. Has something happened? Sarah asked her. Hinata looked at them with dread. Demon Lord Milim is attacking Lubelius as we speak. The information shocked all the knights present. What? What do you mean? Bacchus shouted. I mean exactly what I said. Demon Lord Milim has picked a fight with us, Hinata said to them. But we have not done anything to her. Why is she attacking us? Lytus asked in worry. I don't know, but she is mad that we declared war on the Jura Forest. And from the Magicule I'm sensing from that direction, many of our knights are fighting, Hinata said to them. But we didn't declare war on Demon Lord Rimuru. We only wanted to see him and negotiate, Fritz shouted. Exactly, but it seems that some of our soldiers have gone against Hinata's orders and decided to fight Rimuru themselves, Sarah analyzed. What do we do now? Do we go back to Lubelius or do we proceed to provide backup for our comrades? Arnaud asked. We can't go back even if we want to. That barrier prevents anyone inside from leaving. So we must proceed immediately. Follow me, everyone, Hinata shouted. Hi! The knights along with Hinata began to rush to where the fighting was taking place. They arrived and saw the paladins were fighting a losing battle against some goblins. Hinata observed the surrounding and saw 4 people standing on top of a cliff. The moment the paladins and Hinata arrived at the battlefield, they were paralyzed with fear from seeing the 4 beings on the cliff. Arnaud, Lytus, Bacchus, Fritz and even Sarah were all paralyzed when they made eye contact with the 4 beings on the cliff. 3 of the beings had a massive amount of magicule that rivals a true demon lord or is greater than that, but the one with silver blue hair is the one that most terrified them. That's right, the individuals that was standing at the cliff was none other than Rimuru, Swa, Cheyenne and Rimuru Tempest. Rimuru was the one that most frightens them, and the white mask he is wearing just makes him that much scary. Hinata could not believe her eyes. These guys were on a level that equals a true demon lord in power. The one with red hair is one she can say will be more than a match for Luminous. That was nothing compared to the fear she felt when her gaze met that of Rimuru. She looked at her hand and saw that it was shaking. She looked back and saw that the other paladins were all paralyzed with fear while looking at Rimuru. She couldn't blame them at all, not while looking at this being in front of them. Finally, Rimuru took off his mask and turned to them. He gazed at them like they were nothing but pebble to him. So this is the answer you chose, Hinata? It's a damn shame, he said to her. Hinata found her courage and asked, What do you mean? I sent a messenger to you, and you killed him. You not only killed him, but you also framed one of my subordinates with his death. And you even sent out the paladins to attack us despite all my warnings. You have no one else to blame but yourself, because I will do whatever is necessary to protect my people from harm, Rimuru said to her with a calm look. Hinata was even more sure of it now. The 7 days clergy were conspiring behind her back, and they planned to use Rimuru to eliminate her. She could tell this to Rimuru, but he would never believe her. She looked and saw that the paladins that was fighting the goblins were all losing, and the female orc that was standing by the side of Rimuru before has left and engaged Ranard and Guard. She had no choice left but to make her stand. She drew her rapier and faced Rimuru with a determined and defiant look. She has no delusion of whining, but she vowed in her heart to at least scratch him before she loses. The other knights saw her and regained their fighting spirit. They all drew their weapon and faced Rimuru. What's the plan, guys? Lytus asked. Inasmuch as I hate to admit it, there is absolutely nothing we can do against that being up there, Arno said. I will take Demon Lord Rimuru. The rest of you should try and buy me some time by taking his subordinates, Hinata ordered them. I will assist you, Hinata, sir said to her. Are you sure, sir? Hinata asked him. I can't let you fight that being all by yourself, now can I? We might not stand a chance, but we can still try. Besides, I have a secret weapon I want to try, sir said to her. Hinata nodded and turned back to Rimuru, who was simply observing them. Rimuru looked at Benimaru and Benimaru, You guys, keep those annoying pests away from my fight with Hinata and that other guy. As you wish, Lord Rimuru, Benimaru said, and turned to Arnaud and Bacchus. You two will be my opponents. Follow me, he said, and began to walk away from Rimuru. Arnaud and Bacchus looked at each other and nodded before they followed them. Benimaru. So I looked at the two remaining knights and nodded at them before leaving. Lytus and Fritz looked at each other before they followed Soai and left the area. Only Hinata, Ser, and Rimuru remained. Rimuru drew his sword and looked at Hinata. Come at me whenever you are ready. Hinata and Ser looked at each other before they turned to Rimuru and gave him a defiant look. They immediately rushed him with their full power, knowing that anything less will mean their death. And so, the battle with the paladins began in earnest. Chapter 22, Milim vs. Luminous. Back in Lobilius, everything was peaceful and people were minding their own business. Everyone was as happy as always. The knights were moving about and ensuring that the people were safe, and the people were all happy and grateful for the work of the knights in their nation. That's right, Lobilius was a peaceful nation and everyone was happy until a great calamity approached the city with great speed. The calamity landed with a great thud which shook all the people in the capital city of Lobilius. People began to scream, and before long, chaos descended on the capital. Everyone ran for their lives, and the knights were doing all they could to calm the people. The reason this is happening is because half of the city was in ruin because of the shockwaves that happened after the calamity landed. Buildings were destroyed and many were injured, all because of a single landing of one person. And the aura this person is emitting is doing nothing to calm the people's anxiety of the situation. The person who landed looked at all the frightened people with disinterest. She concentrated her senses around the whole city until she found who she was looking for. So that's where you are. You can't hide from me, the person said to herself. The person took off to the direction of the inner cloister. With her speed, she was able to reach the cloister in no time at all. She landed in front of the sacred mountain that was at the center of Lobilius, but she wasn't alone. She saw multiple men dressed in white armor, and all of them were heavily armed and were looking at her with unshakable resolve. We will not let you pass, one of the soldiers shouted. We are the paladins, defender of mankind. Surrender yourself now, or face the consequence, another shouted. The person looked at them like they were mainly an annoyance. She gave them a cocky smile. Nice to meet all of you. I am known as Demon Lord Milim Nava, the Destroyer. I've come here to see your leader. Bring her out, or I will destroy this pitiful nation. All the soldiers paled when they heard the name Milim. They all know the story of the walking calamity that call herself Milim Nava. They all understood that the situation was dire. Yet, their resolve was unwavering and unshaken. We will not listen to your request, demon. You may be a demon lord, but not even you will stand a chance against all of us combined, one brave knight shouted. The other knights readied themselves for the fight of a lifetime. Little did they know that they will regret that decision very soon. Milim looked at all of them in anger. Then prepare yourselves for death, and with that, the slaughter began. Louis heard the commotion that was happening outside. He rushed outside to know what is happening, but the scene he saw shook him. He saw a single girl with pink hair standing in a pile of dead bodies. The whole area was littered with dead bodies of the paladins that numbered about 1,000. The girl turned her attention to him and gave him a cold look. Louis was very frightened because of who it is that was attacking them. He could not move from his spot under her gaze. You'll also like. Finally, the girl spoke. I will ask this only once. Bring out Luminous now, or I will destroy this worthless nation. Louis found his voice. Why do you want to see her? That is none of your concern. Will you call her, yes or no? Milim asked him with disinterest. Louis did not know what to do. He obviously can't call his master here, not knowing the intention of Demon Lord Milim. On the other hand, he can't face Milim in combat. If he tried, he would be killed in an instant. He was lost on what to do, but luck was still on his side. Demon Lord Luminous Valentine came out to see what was going on. Luminous heard some commotion outside her temple. She came out to see what was happening and froze from what she saw. Milim was standing in the middle of dead corpse of her people. She calmly looked at Milim, who was still talking to Louis, to understand her intention. Milim looked behind Louis and saw Luminous standing there. So there you are. Luminous, I have some business with you. I can see that, Milim. What business do you have with me exactly? As far as I'm concerned, I haven't done anything to you that deserves you killing my people in cold blood, Luminous said to her with a calm look. Milim's face changed to anger after hearing that. Don't play dumb with me, Luminous. You know of my relationship with Rimuru, and you know how I would react when someone threatens him. Luminous was very confused now. What are you talking about? I have done nothing to threaten Rimuru. Oh. Then explain your soldiers that I saw, matching to Rimuru's city. By their number you can tell that they were going to war. You are their leader, which means you were the one who ordered them to attack Rimuru. Milim shouted at her with anger. Luminous didn't know what Milim was talking about. Why would she send her men to fight Rimuru when she knew what he can do? She is not that stupid, but Milim will not believe her. She calmly looked at Milim. Look, Milim, I did not give them any such orders. They are doing this on their own. But still, why are you worried about Rimuru when you know what he can do and how powerful he is? This is not about my darling's strength. I know he can protect himself from those weaklings, but I'm still mad that you had the gut to pick a fight with someone who is very dear to me. I'm going to make sure that you never think of making such stupid mistake again after I'm through with you, Milim said to her in anger. Luminous knew that nothing she would say will ever convince Milim that she was innocent. She brought out her sword, Night Rose, a mystic grade weapon, and took a fighting stance. Lewis! Do not interfere or you will die. Keep any other person that wants to interfere away from the fight. Understood, my lady, Lewis replied as he went to a safe distance from the fight. Luminous waited for Milim to make her move. I never imagined that I would have to face Milim in a fight. This is getting ridiculous. How am I supposed to beat her? I know my limit and I know that she is way above me in power. This will be tricky. Milim rushed at Luminous with a punch. Luminous jumped back and evaded her despite the speed Milim was moving. This is thanks to Luminous having thought acceleration, which allows her to perceive things at a speed far beyond the speed of light. Luminous landed and rushed Milim with her sword raised. She reached Milim, who was on the ground, and swinged her sword at her, aiming for her midsection. She put a lot of power in her swing, and had it been anyone else, she would have cut the person in two, but Milim took the attack head-on without a scratch. Luminous' sword swing was stopped the moment it made contact with Milim's body, and this greatly shocked her. She was so distracted from this phenomenon that she did not see that Milim was attacking her. Milim sent out a punch directly at the face of Luminous, which caught her off guard and sent her flying back to the temple. Luminous crashed into the walls of the temple with a heavy boom. Lewis, who was standing by and saw her master crashing into the walls of the temple, became very worried. He tried to rush to her aid, but Milim was faster than he could ever imagine. Before he took a step, Milim appeared in front of him with her fist cocked back, ready to punch him. Milim was standing to see if Luminous will get up from her punch. While she waited, she saw the savant of Luminous trying to go to her aid, and this annoyed her. Might as well take out that weakling before he gets in the way of my fight with Luminous, Milim thought to herself. She rushed to Lewis with her speed and punched him, which caused a massive boom with a huge smoke. When the smoke cleared, Lewis was seen, seating on the ground with wide eyes, looking at the scene in front of him. He was shocked because Luminous was in front of him, with her face covered in blood and using her sword to block the punch of Milim that would have killed him. Luminous could not believe she survived taking a direct punch to the face from Milim. If she didn't have the unique skill Lust, she would have been dead. She was lucky because with all her strength, she was able to block the punch of Milim that would have killed her savant Lewis. She turned to Lewis and shouted at him. Why are you still seating there, you fool? Hurry up and get away, quickly. Lewis immediately stood up and ran down the sacred mountain. Luminous started to feel a huge force behind the sword that was still blocking Milim's punch. She tried her best to stand her ground, but she started to see small cracks in her sword. Milim Nava is ever the monster I know she is. She has not even gotten serious, and she is already this strong. If we continue to clash here, she may destroy this city. I need to get her away from here, Luminous thought to herself. The moment she saw that Milim was going to overpower her, Luminous jumped back and took off in the direction away from the city. Milim saw her flying away and took off after her. Both of them flew to an empty field with grasses all over the place before Luminous landed in the field, followed by Milim, who was right behind her. Both stood opposite from each other and looked at each other. Finally Luminous spoke. Milim, I don't know why you are accusing me of things that I don't know about, but if you still want to fight me, I promise you I won't hold back anymore. Pretend all you want, but you will eat your words after I'm done with you today. Anyone who dares to plan harm to my beloved will have no mercy for me, Milim said to her with anger. If that is your answer, then so be it. Just remember that you have no one to blame but yourself when you lose, Luminous said before she began to release all her magicules. Her powers were massive and it coated her body like a kind of armor. Luminous' sword changed with the added power and became more durable and sharp. Luminous then raised her right hand in the air and a massive magic circle appeared above Milim. She brought her left hand and pointed it to the ground and another massive magic circle appeared under Milim. She clapped both of her hands together and multiple magic circles surrounded Milim and trapped her in the middle of the magic circles. Luminous raised both her hand in the air and a huge amount of magicules began to generate from her. She looked at Milim and smirked, "Behold my power, Milim. This is a trump card I've been saving for my rematch with Dragul and Veldora. This is my holy and demonic magic mixed together. I call it Demon Lightsaber. I created this spell with the intention of killing true dragons if I ever faced one again. Never did I thought that I would be using it on you though. Now I will give you one last chance to back down or I will kill you." Milim, who stood silently, smiled. "Oh. You sure are confident in that power of yours. Let's put that power of yours to the test, shall we?" Luminous became angry after hearing Milim's response. "I'm serious, you know, if I release the spell, you will die. Leave and I will stop. I will be the judge of that. Hit me with your best shot if you dare." Milim taunted Luminous. Luminous sighed and brought down her hand to erase her demon lightsaber. The multiple magic circle which surrounds Milim began to glow. Then a very bright red and black light filled the whole area and consumed Milim. The light was so bright that those inside the city thought that a second sun has appeared. Many people from all across the region were able to see the light that kept on shining. Finally, after some minute, the light died down and dust smoke covered the area. The attack that Luminous used has the same property of death, blessing, and disintegration mixed together. This attack will kill anyone it touches regardless of the type of barrier the person used. This is because the attack is designed to erase both the physical and spiritual body of anyone it touches. It was no wonder that Luminous was confident in the attack being able to kill a higher being. Luminous turned her back and was prepared to leave when she heard sounds coming from the smoke. She turned around and looked closely in the smoke to see if it was her mind playing tricks on her. Then, all of a sudden, a huge gust of wind blew out all the smoke to reveal Milim standing there in her full world-class armor and with her world-class sword Tenma. She had a black and purple aura that covered her entire body and she stood proudly and confidently looking at Luminous. That was one killer attack. I can see why you were confident about it. If this attack had been used on anyone besides me, I'm certain it would have killed that person. I think that only my darling Rimuru can withstand that attack. Too bad for you, but it didn't work on me, Milim plainly told her. Luminous had her eyes wide open. This was her trump card, her best attack, and she took it like it was nothing. How? What kind of power does she has to be able to counter a power that disintegrate all manner of phenomena that exist? This is way beyond being a catastrophe level. This is on a level of the gods. Are you saying that Milim Nava has surpassed the level of catastrophe? How did you survive that attack? That attack was designed to disintegrate all phenomena in existence. It's not an attack that can be blocked by any known equipment or power. So how did you do it? Luminous shouted at her. Milim looked at her and smirked. I don't like revealing my powers to others, but I guess I can make an exception. Have you heard of ultimate skill before? Luminous was surprised by the question. Of course I have. It is the evolved form of unique skill and the final evolutionary stage of skills in general. They are known only in legends because they are so hard to obtain. Are you saying you possess an ultimate skill? That's right. People who are very lucky were able to awaken an ultimate skill after certain conditions were met. A person can only have one ultimate skill, but that isn't the case for me, Milim explained to her. Luminous was starting to understand what she was saying to her. Are you suggesting that you have more than one ultimate skill? Exactly. I won't tell you what my first ultimate skill can do because that one is a secret that not even my darling Rimuru knows about. But I will tell you about my second ultimate skill. I possess the ultimate skill, Armageddon Destruction. This skill has the power to destroy and erase all things in existence. It doesn't matter what shape, form, or type the thing is. I can erase it so long as the phenomena exist. With this skill, erasing your spell was nothing more than child's play for me, Milim told her with her smirk increased. Luminous didn't want to believe what she heard, but the evidence is standing right in front of her. She couldn't help but laugh bitterly because of how helpless she felt at the face of the overwhelming power before her. How can she beat Milim when she can erase anything and any attack she has? This is just so unfair, and to make matters worse, she is almost out of magicule because of that last attack. In fact, it is taking all her strength just to keep on standing. I must praise you though. You were powerful enough to force me to rely on my ultimate skill to survive. Had I not possessed that skill, I would have perished from that last attack. Now it is over. Try and survive this if you can, Milim told her before she took her stance. She dropped her sword and it disappeared before she looked at Luminous and got ready to attack. Luminous saw that she was going to attack and got ready to defend herself. She had her full focus at Milim, watching her to see what she would do, but right before her eyes, Milim disappeared and appeared in front of her and gave her an uppercut that sent her flying. Luminous was sent flying in the air with her broken jaw and in serious pain. She was confused on what happened, but before she could think more on it, Milim appeared again above her and kicked her in her spine, which sent her flying again in the air. Luminous was in a lot of pain despite having pain nullification skill. She couldn't think because Milim was not giving her a chance to. Milim appeared again to where she was still flying and punched her in the stomach, which sent her flying, and she repeated the process. Milim kept on punching and kicking Luminous all over the place in the air until finally, she gave her a drop kick in the head, which sent her crashing to the ground with a huge boom that created a huge dust smoke. Milim flew down into the smoke and released a little bit of her aura, which cleared out the smoke in the area to reveal Luminous lying on the ground with multiple cracks in it and her body covered in a lot of blood. She looks like a dead corpse, but she was able to survive that punishment thanks to her infinite regeneration skill. Milim looked at her and gave her a cold look. Any last words before I finish you off? Luminous weakly looked at Milim and glared. I didn't do anything to you, yet you falsely accused me of doing things I know nothing about. I told you that I didn't send anyone to attack Rimuru. Someone else is behind this. Don't try to act all innocent on me. Your knights were matching to my beloved Rimuru's nation to attack him. I know that Rimuru and his subordinates will handle them, but what kind of future wife will I be if I don't try to protect my future husband nation from anyone who wishes to harm it? Milim shouted at her. Luminous was confused by what Milim said. Future husband? What do you mean? Oh. Didn't I tell you? Milim showed Luminous her ring finger. Rimuru proposed to me, and we are going to get married soon. I promised myself that I will do anything to protect Rimuru from danger because he means more to me than life itself. So I will not stand by and watch you plotting his downfall while I can do something about it. I understand how you feel. Believe me, I do, but you got it wrong. Please, give me a chance to prove that this accusation is all a mistake, Luminous pleaded with her. How do you plan to do that? Milim asked her. By going to Tempest and seeing the paladins myself. I will prove my innocence that way, Luminous told her. Milim thought about her offer before she nodded. Fine, but I will be taking you there myself, to make sure that you don't escape. Just know that I'm actually considering this because Rimuru wouldn't want me to kill you, but if I find out that you are tricking me, I will not hesitate to end you. Remember that. Luminous had no choice but accept. Milim went and picked her up and placed her in her back before she took off to the direction of Tempest. Luminous has her suspicion that the 7 days were behind this mess. She vowed to kill them all if that was the case as a retribution for this humiliating beatdown she received by the hands of Milim. Diablo was above the castle of the King of Falmouth in the air. He has a smile on his face that clearly did not reach his eyes. This just goes to show how angry he was at the moment. He was definitely not in a forgiving mood. It all started when information got to Rimuru that the Archbishop Rahim had been murdered. The rumor says that the killer was the demon summoned by Demon Lord Rimuru. And now the new King of Falmouth has amassed an army numbering 20,000 with the help of the nobles, which sided with his plan of taking over the kingdom of Falmouth from the hands of the new Demon Lord Rimuru. The new King Edward was as greedy as the former king, and with his new military powers, he has declared war on the former King Idmaris, who is being supported by the hero Yim. This failure was the highest form of shame to Diablo, who was assigned by Rimuru to handle the things in Falmouth. He cannot even begin to describe how disappointed he was at himself for this failure, and Cheyenne making fun of him was not helping. Which was why, when Rimuru sent out a little bit of his subordinates with Hankro as the overseer to stop the Falmouth army, Diablo volunteered to be the one to attack the king and his men. Rimuru agreed to leave it in his hands again, which made Diablo quite happy. This time, he will make sure that the bastard who spread those rumors about him pays dearly for the humiliation he received. Which is why, when the fighting began with Yum's group and the Falmouth army, Diablo flew to the castle of the new King of Falmouth. I suppose I should pay the king a little visit, Diablo said to himself before he disappeared like he wasn't there at all. King Edward was in his throne room being briefed about the state of his men in the battlefield. He was accompanied by Glenda and Grigori, who were tasked to protect him. He also has some demon slayer adventurers who were hand-picked by the merchant that provided information for him regarding the new demon lord. He was confident in his safety because the 2 paladins that were taxed to protect him were part of the 10 great sages who protects humanity from harm. Their powers were things from another world, and he was happy to have them as bodyguards. He had heard the rumors that the world's strongest human, Hinata, has set out to slay the new demon lord. He was confident that the Hinata will be able to slay that new demon lord. As for him, he could just relax and enjoy his tea along with the paladins and watch the show from the sidelines. That was the plan until an unexpected visitor arrived. An unknown being appeared from thin air right in the middle of the throne room. Coo. A pleasure to meet you. My name is Diablo, and I am the faithful servant of Demon Lord Rimuru. Diablo introduced himself. The room was thrown into chaos, followed by his appearance. The knight captain of the king began to give orders to protect the king. They took the king to the rear and formed a defensive wall between King Edward and Diablo. You'll also like. Diablo soon found himself surrounded by Grigori and his forces, covering the large throne room. Some journalist came into the room to see what was going on. As this was happening, Diablo never lost the smile on his face. Diablo turned to the journalist. I will not harm you. Just stay over there for me and record everything that will happen in this room. He snapped his finger, which created a barrier that covered the press corps. This was to ensure that collateral damage may not befall them. King Edward was afraid when Diablo had appeared inside the room, but seeing him surrounded like this brought back his usual cockiness. Well. The demon savant of Demon Lord Rimuru. What brings you here, if I may ask? Edward asked. Foo. You know exactly why I'm here, Diablo told him with his smile. Might this be because of the war I am waging with my brother? Edward asked. It's good that you are paying attention. You see, my lord was very disappointed with my performance here, which was very hard for me. But luckily, he has given me a second chance, and I will not fail him this time. Now then, this will be your last warning. Surrender now and hold peace talks with Sir Yom, or you will regret the day you were born, Diablo told the king. Why should I do that when it was your country who conspired with my brother Admaris to charge us double the reparation? This is just us trying to recover the funds that my brother has embezzled, Edward said to him. So you are refusing my proposal then? Diablo asked. Yes. I can't trust your nation after you killed Archbishop Rahim on Demon Lord Rimuru's orders. This is the evidence right here. Edward brought out a crystal ball that showed how Archbishop Rahim was murdered by some unknown person. And what does this evidence prove exactly? Diablo asked. Don't you see? Lady Glenda brought this to us. You infiltrated Lobilius and killed Rahim because he has no fear of you and was able to overcome your terror. You feared him telling the world of the crimes you have been committing, which led you to kill him, Edward said while looking down at Diablo as if daring him to deny the evidence. Diablo gave a small laugh, a mere human overcoming my fear. That's a very funny joke. Though, I don't have time for this charade anymore. Edward was taken aback by the response. What do you mean? Simple, really. I had originally come here to explain my innocence, but I've changed my mind. You humans will only believe what you see anyway, so I have a proposition, Diablo said to Edward. Which is? If anybody here can overcome their fear of me, I will admit defeat. Fair warning, I am in a very bad mood now, so I won't be holding back. Challenge me at your own risk, Diablo told him with his smile that did nothing to conceal the rage he felt. Edward was stricken with so much terror that it took all his willpower to keep himself from peeing his pants. Kill him, he shouted in fear. The demon hunters that was mixed with the soldiers who were guarding the king were waiting for that particular order. They all leaped out and attacked Diablo. Overcome our fear of you? What a joke! You might think yourself invincible as an archdemon, but we've dealt with demons like you back in our home country. No demon can survive for long if you pulverize their physical form. That applies just as much to archdemon. We've done our homework. Don't underestimate us humans. The hunters were underestimating Diablo, who has yet to move. They swinged their special compound alloy chains imbued with holy element at Diablo, which pinned him down. The chain bounded his hands and legs. The leader of the demon hunters did not see Diablo as any kind of threat. He has seen and faced archdemons in a fight before, and this one will be no different. He was confident in their victory when he saw that Diablo has been bounded by their first attack, that he almost doubted his ears when he heard Diablo question. Are you ready, then? Diablo had asked. What? I would like a starting signal, if you people are done with your preparations, Diablo said to them. Don't underestimate us, demon. Go Thunderbolt, the leader of the hunters shouted. The hunters each fired a huge blast of lightning at Diablo, which roasted him from where he was bound. Everyone in the room, including the journalist, were all watching Diablo being roasted by the lightning. What does natural, non-magical infused lighting taste like, you demon? Demons like you are always protected by layers of barriers. Too bad for you, we have a way to bypass that. Demons must be granted physical form to impose their will upon this world. With your body destroyed, there is nothing you can do. The hunters boasted with confidence from seeing Diablo being roasted by their lighting attack. Edward could not express how happy he was. He made a promise to himself to increase the reward of the merchant that brought this demon hunters to him. He can finally rest easy with the threat gone. That was a meager effort. Too meager, in fact. Did you really think this was enough to stop me? The whole room shook, and with a huge burst of force, the lightning that covered Diablo were destroyed, revealing Diablo still with his smile. He casually brought his arm up, which destroyed the chains binding him. Everyone in the room had a gobsmacked expression from seeing Diablo with no scratch whatsoever. You monster! How can this be? This is insanity. Needless to say, the whole demon hunters lost their will to fight after seeing a glimpse of Diablo's powers. Now for the test, Diablo casually said. The whole room suddenly became heavy after Diablo had said that. No, stop. Get away from me. Help. Someone please help me. Please make it stop, this is hell. The hunters fell to the ground and began screaming in pure terror. Not just the hunters, everybody in the room besides the journalist that was inside Diablo's barrier began to scream in terror while rolling on the ground. It didn't take long before they all lost consciousness. What happened was just Diablo releasing a little bit of his aura, which is what caused this panic. It seems that only the leader of the hunters and the two paladins were still standing, barely though. Diablo was impressed. Oh. So only 3 of you passed the test? Well, you do deserve praise for withstanding my lord's ambition. I permit you to challenge me, Diablo told them. The leader of the hunters was doing everything in his power not to pass out. Your bluffs don't scare me. Bluffs? Diablo asked in confusion. Yeah. Everyone knows that only Demon Lord class monsters can use Lord's ambition. There is no way an archdemon like you can use it, the leader said to him. I see where the confusion is coming from. You are correct and incorrect in that assumption. It is true that demons like myself are limited in our magical count when leaving the demon realm. However, it is possible to evolve to the next level, assuming the right conditions are met, Diablo explained to him. What do you mean? The leader of the hunter asked. I think the red would be an example famous enough for you to be aware of, Diablo told him. By red, you don't mean? The leader of the hunter asked with pure terror. There is no one who doesn't know about the absolute monster who rules the demon lords themselves. His powers are things from legends, and he leaves a widespread destruction wherever he goes. That's right, the being's name was Guy Crimson, and he is the strongest being in the whole universe. Diablo smiled, pleased with the look of terror on the leader's face. Is good that you know who I'm talking about. He is the perfect example of what I was explaining earlier. If a demon meets the requirements, then using that power becomes possible for us. Once the leader of the hunters became aware of what Diablo was saying, he began to cry and fell on his knees. Please spare my life. I'm sorry, he begged in tears. What are you saying? You passed the test, didn't you? You are permitted to challenge me, Diablo told him with a smile that did not reach his eyes. The leader began to cry harder while bowing. I beg you. I was only following orders. Please have mercy. I will do anything you want. If you want me to slit the king's throat while he's passed out, I will. Just spare my life. The journalists that was still in Diablo's barrier were all surprised. This was the supposed leader of the best demon hunters in the Western nation, groveling on the ground and begging for his life like a pathetic dog. To think that this demon was able to accomplish this with no effort at all. It made them glad that they were not his target. Diablo nodded his head to the leader. Consider yourself lucky that you are not my target. But know that there will be no next time. Thank you so much, the leader of the hunters said with joy. Now then, hurry up and carry all the unconscious people to that barrier where those journalists are, Diablo told him. The leader nodded his head and began to wake his comrades up before helping them to the barrier. Once that was done, Diablo turned to the two paladins. Now then. Time to deal with you 2-inch. Grigori, being the arrogant guy he is, didn't like the tone Diablo was using. Ha 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 ha. Don't get so cocky, demon. You may have scared those weaklings, but you will soon discover that I'm different from them. Diablo's smile grew bigger. Interesting. Consider me amused. You saw a very, very, very tiny glimpse of my power, and yet you still have this arrogance of yours. You humans never ceases to amaze me. Of course I'm not afraid of you. I know that I'm more powerful than you, and with my partner here backing me up, your defeat is inevitable, Grigori said arrogantly. That's an amusing joke. Please show me this power you are most proud of, Diablo mocked. We will see who has the last laugh. I wanted to be the one to slay that foolish slime you call master, but unfortunately, Hinata and Sarah will be the one to do it. Well, your head will do for now, Grigori said to Diablo with a mocking voice. Diablo paused. He couldn't believe what he just heard now. That Grigori just said the taboo word that should never be said in front of Diablo, that foolish slime. And just like that, Grigori just signed his own death warrant. You were not originally my target, but, for disrespecting great Rimuru in my presence, your life will be forfeited in the most painful and cruel way possible, I assure you, Diablo told him with rage. We shall see, demon. Now, Glenda! Grigori shouted. Glenda, who has been sneaking to Diablo from behind, rushed him with a dagger in hand, ready to pierce his heart. She was close to Diablo with the dagger, but she stopped, right behind him for some reason. No! Not that she stopped, more like she couldn't move her body. She used her eyes to look down and saw that she was standing in a magic circle. Diablo turned to her. I may have been talking to that fellow over there, but that does not mean that I let my guard down. That magic circle you are standing on was made to paralyze and disable any and all skills and the movement of the target. It is a very low-level spell, and you will need a lot more training if this low-level spell was able to catch you. You are finished for believing that you stood a chance against me. After Diablo said that, he grabbed Glenda's neck and punched her in the stomach, which made her to cough up blood before he threw her to the far wall in the room. Glenda crashed in the wall with a huge boom due to the force that Diablo used when he threw her. After the shockwave, Glenda slid from the wall and fell on the floor with a huge pile of blood gathering underneath where she is lying. Grigori, who saw how easily Glenda was taken out, was speechless. He thought that this will be an easy mission due to this being only to exterminate an archdemon. He never imagined that the demon will be this powerful. No matter, he was confident that he can still take him down. After all, Grigori still have his trump card. I don't know what you are planning over there, but I just want to say to you that this battle is over. Diablo, who is now looking at Grigori, said to him. What? And that was when Grigori realized that everything is extremely slow. He moved his eyes and saw that he could not move a single part of his body. That's no the right word. The right word will be that his body and everything else around him is moving at an extremely, ridiculously slow speed. What happened to him? You must be wondering what happened to you and why everything is now slow to you. Well, this is due to a skill I developed, Time Break. It allows me to slow down the time and perception of any target I want by 1 billion times. Right now, at this very second, I am speaking to you, but in your current perspective, it will take you like 100 years before you hear my words. So if time is slowed down only to you, what will happen if I do this? Diablo walked to Grigori, who is just standing there, and pierced his heart with his hand. He looked at Grigori and slapped away his body to the wall that was next to him. Right now, I just pierced your heart, but in your perspective, it will take you about another 100 years before you feel it. That will be your punishment for what you said about my master. You will spend years watching as my hand slowly comes close to your heart, and you will be helpless to stop it. You will feel all the pain of me crushing your heart with you being aware of every little detail for years due to it happening at a very slow speed in your perspective. Not like you will hear what I'm saying to you right now. It will take you a while to die, so I will keep your body in the underworld until you do die. Diablo transported Grigori's body to the underworld before turning to the throne. You people have been watching me for a while now. Don't you think it's time you should come out?" After he said that, two people with white robe appeared. The robe had a white hoodie which covered their faces. The two people appeared next to the unconscious king, who is just now waking up. "What happened?" Edward asked as he looked around. He saw that the demon hunters were inside the barrier that Diablo created for the journalist, and he saw that Diablo was still standing. He became terrified again from seeing Diablo, but he was a little relieved that Diablo had his attention elsewhere. Diablo looked at the spot he left Glenda and saw that she had escaped when he was torturing Grigori. He frowned a little and returned his attention to the new arrivals. "And who might you two be?" "We are the 7 Days clergy, and we have been taxed to eliminate you," one of them said. After that, the two of them began to concentrate a huge amount of mana into a fire spell. "Now then, let's see you survive this demon. No despair and die, along with everyone here." Both of them shouted before they fired the massive fireball at everyone in the room. Diablo, who had already predicted that this was their plan, created more layers of barrier to protect everyone and himself. King Edward was very lucky to have run to the far back behind Diablo, which was protected by Diablo's barrier. Once the fire spell hit, a massive explosion happened that destroyed the castle. After the castle has been destroyed by the explosion, Diablo and everyone else were all right. The explosion was too small to dent Diablo's barrier. Diablo began to laugh. Coo. You two were not aiming for me with that spell, but on everyone here. Trying to silence the witnesses. The clergy were surprised, but they hit it well, as expected from a demon of the new demon lord. Just know that no one here will be leaving this place alive, one of the clergy said. The journalists and all the knights could not believe what they were hearing. The 7 Days clergy, who were supposed to be the protectors of mankind, was planning to kill them all if not for Diablo. This changes everything they believed in. Diablo smiled. "I take it that you two were behind everything that happened? You two killed Archbishop Rahim and manipulated the paladins to pick a fight with my master. And you two are also behind all that happened in this nation, right?" "That's right, demon. It makes no difference to us if you find out our plans, since you all will be dead soon by our hands," one of the clergy said in an arrogant tone. "Even if you figured that out, what exactly can you do about it?" The second clergy mocked Diablo. "This is interesting indeed. I'm glad that those journalists were here to record this for the world. You claim that I can do nothing right? I will make you two regret those words," Diablo told them. He began to release a tiny bit of his aura, which covered the surrounding area in black mist. A magic circle appeared by the side of his left arm, and a tiny but powerful power appeared in his left arm. The clergy were afraid of the power of Diablo. His powers are very much bigger than their god Luminous, and this fact frightened them. They were now reconsidering picking a fight with this demon. Diablo looked at them. "Prepare to die, because I won't be showing mercy to any of you. I will need to inform Lord Rimuru about this group and what they are planning," Diablo thought to himself before he faced them. "Now then, come at me whenever you are ready." The clergy had no choice but to rush Diablo with everything they had. They didn't understand that by challenging Diablo, their lives were as good as over. Back in Tempest, a massive clash of power was happening in the isolated field where Rimuru and his subordinates were fighting Hinata and the Paladins. The goblins were almost done dealing with the Paladins' soldiers. It's not that the Paladins were weak, it's just that the goblins has a unique skill that revives and heal them when they die. The skill is the unique skill, Immortality, which they received when they were brought back to life after Rimuru became a true demon lord. Now the main focus of the fight is between Benimaru, Cheyenne and Soai. With Cheyenne, the Paladins' knights led by Renard and Guard were prepared to engage in a fight of their life. They never imagined that they would face such calamity in their life. The calamity before them was overwhelmingly strong and defied all reasoning. When Ranard and his charge first arrived inside the Jura forest, there was very little magicules in the air. This made Ranard to doubt the resurrection of the storm dragon Veldora and the accession of demon lord Rimuru. That gave him enough proof to believe the words of the 7 days clergy who told him that Hinata was working with demon lord Rimuru. He wanted to be the one to eradicate the monster nation and their evil leader. So he called guard and assembled a group of paladins knights and rushed into the Jura forest. He was so confident about their victory that he charged recklessly inside the forest. Oh! How wrong and foolish he was. That confidence left him after his knights were ambushed by goblins. The knights were giving it their all, but the goblins will not die no matter how much they are cut down. Burning, cutting, electrocuting, sealing, etc. Nothing was working on putting the goblins down, and before he knew it, half of his men had been killed. The goblins were a huge problem, but not compared to the 4 beings he saw standing on a cliff, watching what was happening. Ranard has never in his life seen power like the one those 4 beings possessed. The one with the blue hair glanced at them like they were ants. Ranard was terrified, and the soldiers were even more so. Some of them have even passed out from the aura that was pouring out from those 4 beings. Ranard saw Hinata approach the area and prepared to engage the being in a silver blue hair whom he had learned was Demon Lord Rimuru. And that is how his troubles began. Currently he wanted to cry and run away from this place. The reason is because one of the beings on the cliff is standing right before them. He was a fool to believe that they could win in a fight with this kind of monsters. The being standing before them was a female Oni with a single horn in her forehead. She was dressed in a tight suite and is holding a big-ass sword over her shoulder. Ranard had already given the orders to set up a powerful anti-monster barrier to the 4 paladins still with him, but that was very useless. It's not that the barrier was not working on the female Oni, it's just that her powers were too massive to be contained by their measly barrier. The paladins have already summoned their spiritual armor, which is the ultimate form of protection for the paladins when they realized that the being before them was dangerous. You'll also like. Finally, the female Oni spoke to them. My name is Cheyenne, the first secretary of Demon Lord Rimuru. I have been ordered by my lord to pass this message to you. Surrender or death. If you people don't drop your weapons right now, I will not hesitate to cut all of you down. Surrender and live, defy us and die where you stand. Ranard, being the leader of his group, would like nothing more than to surrender. But the pride of Libelius will not allow him to cower in the face of his foe. He made his choice. We will never surrender to monsters. We would rather die with our pride than to cower in the face of danger. You may be a god, but not even the likes of you is enough to take us all down, he shouted at her. Cheyenne gave a small smile at that response. Very well said. My respect for you has increased. I will respond to your will in kind and make sure that all of you meet a quick death for your bravery. Rejoice, for you get to die by the hands of the first secretary of Demon Lord Rimuru. Guard, who heard her arrogant speech, got pissed. Do you believe that you can win? We have surrounded you in the anti-monster barrier, and we have our ultimate protection. What can you do when you can barely move your body? We will not show any mercy to you. Prepare to die, monster. After Guard had said that, he brought his red spear and rushed Cheyenne, who was standing still, and prepared to pierce her with his crimson spear. No! Stop, Guard! Ranard tried to warn him, but it was too late. Guard reached Cheyenne in a blink of an eye by human standard and thrust his spear directly to her heart, but to Cheyenne, his movement was too slow and easy to dodge. Cheyenne saw the red spear coming to her heart, but instead of dodging it, she caught it with her left palms. Guard, who saw that his spear has been caught with ease, became very worried, but before he could think of what next to do, he saw a big sword coming to the midsection of his stomach. He couldn't do anything but watch as the sword approached his stomach. Cheyenne, after catching the spear in her left hand, used her right hand to swing her sword at Guard with great speed. Her sword connected with Guard midsection and continued till Guard was severed in two. The force behind her swing sent the two halves of Guard body to fly in the air before they hit the ground, leaving a huge trail of blood. Ranard, who watched as Guard was killed with such ease, became very angry. "Damn you, evil beast! Everyone, prepare and launch the holy cannon barrage," he shouted. The paladins began to fire bolts of holy energy from all sides at Cheyenne, but she just deflected them all with ease using her sword. She was not only deflecting the blast of holy energy but was absolving them into her sword, which was glowing in power. She stopped absolving the energy and swinged her sword to one of the paladins who was maintaining the barrier. The paladin didn't even see the attack coming before her was cut in half from his head down. This continued for a while until the battlefield became quiet. Ranard was very shocked. This monster was not only taking their holy cannon like it was nothing, but was also absolving them and firing them back to her foes. This was impossible because it requires precision on the level of single point in time, and this monster was pulling it off without breaking a sweat. He didn't imagine that any attack can go through the holy field and reach them. This was beyond common sense. Ranard turned around, and to his shock, all the paladins with him were dead. They were all cut down by that attack just now. He was now alone with this monster. He heard footsteps coming to him, and he hurriedly turned and saw Cheyenne with her sword in her shoulder, approaching him without a care in the world. Ranard jumped back and kept some distance between himself and Cheyenne. "Stay back, you monster." Cheyenne stopped and gave him a look that conveyed how insignificant he was to her. "Do you finally see the difference between us? You should have heeded my warning and surrendered. Your men would not have died a needless death if you had only listened. Now look at you, alone and scared, with no one to back you up. Now I will ask again, will you surrender?" Ranard bit his lips with rage and sorrow for his fallen comrades. "I would rather die than to surrender to you. I swear to avenge my brethren." He brought out his sword, and it began to charge with holy light energy. This was his special move. The power that earned him the title Paladin of Light. It consists of him channeling a massive amount of holy energy mixed with his spirit energy into his blade. The two mixture of energy will destroy any kind of monster if it made contact. It doesn't matter what kind of defense the monster may have, once you are targeted, this move will bypass all defense until it makes contact with the target. Ranard, after he was done charging his energy, took a huge leap and rushed to Cheyenne with his very bright blade. Cheyenne, who saw the attack coming, instinctively knew that she cannot block it. She brought her sword and stood her ground as she waited for the Ranard to attack her. Ranard reached Cheyenne in mere moments. "Take this, divine thrust." He thrust his sword at Cheyenne with great speed. The sword released a light energy attack that headed to Cheyenne with such speed, but the impossible happened. Right before Ranard's eyes, he saw Cheyenne cut through his light attack that is said to bypass any kind of defense. She not only cut it, but the attack vanished from sight after it was cut. He was confused on what exactly happened, which is why he didn't see that Cheyenne was right in front of him. Cheyenne, after she cut through that light attack, rushed Ranard, who was still distracted. She swung her blade to his stomach with great force. Ranard, who saw Cheyenne's attack too late, brought his sword to try and block Cheyenne's, but it was futile. Cheyenne's sword didn't even hesitate to cut through both Ranard's sword and his stomach. The force she put into the swing sent Ranard flying back until his back hit a tree and he slid down with a huge gash wound in his stomach. Ranard weakly looked at Cheyenne, who was approaching him. "How did you block my attack?" Cheyenne stood in front of him and looked down at him. "Since you are already at death's door, I guess I could tell you. I possess a unique skill that allows me to override and change anything I cut to the desired outcome I visualized. I used this skill to nullify that light attack of yours. If I didn't have this skill, then that attack of yours would have seriously injured me. And for that very reason, you have my praise." Ranard, who was leaning to a tree, looked down to his still bleeding stomach. "I guess this is it for me. We never stood a chance against you, huh? If only I had surrendered, then none of this would have happened. Please, do me a favor and spare Lady Hinata's life, as my dying wish. That decision is entirely up to my lord. If he wants to spare her, then good. If not, then so be it," Cheyenne told him before she began to walk away. "So this is it. This is where I die. I only wish that I had confirmed if what the 7 days clergy had said about Hinata working with Demon Lord Rimuru was true. It couldn't be true. If they were working together, why would she be fighting Demon Lord Rimuru right now? Now that I think about it, why did the 7 days clergy send me here when they knew that I stand no chance against the monster nation? I think that something is going on behind the scenes, and Hinata and I were used by the 7 days clergy. Oh, how I wish that I could warn the others, but I can't move nor can I speak anymore. I guess it is time to go," Ranard thought to himself. He looked up to the sky before slowly closing his eyes and breathing his last breath. He died while leaning on the tree as Cheyenne left the area. With Soai. If there is one word to us to describe the expression of Lytus and Fritz at the moment, then it would be shock and terrified. Just after both of them followed Soai to a part of the forest, he vanished and the whole area was suddenly covered in darkness. It felt like they were trapped inside a giant cocoon of darkness. Not long after that, many spikes made of pure darkness began to appear from all directions and attacked them relentlessly. Both Fritz and Lytus have been doing everything in their power to fend off the onslaught of spikes, but they were reaching their limit. There's just no end to this spikes. I don't think I can continue, Lytus said to Fritz with an exhausted tone. Don't give up yet, Lytus. We can't fall here. We have to combine our powers together to dispel this darkness, Fritz said with determination. Nice try, but I'm always one step ahead of you too. Was the voice they heard before string made of iron bound both of them. Both Fritz and Lytus tried to break the strings, but they discovered that it was a lot thicker than they thought. This is bad, Fritz. We can't get free, Lytus said while struggling in her bind. Tell me about it. I'm using both my spirit armor and full magic heals, but this string still won't break. My strings are the toughest strings out there. Second only to Lord Rimuru's. Weak humans like yourselves can never break it, and besides, I've already won this fight, Soai said to them while revealing himself. Fritz heard what Soai said and got confused. What do you mean you have won? We are still standing, and we... Sadly, he couldn't finish what he wanted to say because he got impaled from all sides by the shadow spikes. Fritz coughed out blood and collapsed in the strings that was binding him. He died instantly. Lytus, who saw all this, shouted in sorrow, Fritz. She cried bitterly and looked at the expressionless Soai with rage. You accursed monster. I vow that I will have revenge for what you have done. That would have been threatening if you have the power to back it up. Sadly, you don't. If you want to blame someone for this tragedy, then blame your foolishness for coming to pick a fight with us. My lord has given us an order to spare no one who are hostile with us, and I intend to carry out my orders. Goodbye, and may you reflect on this foolishness in your next life, Soai said to her before he sent the shadow spikes to her which impaled her. Lytus, with her last strength, looked up from her bind and saw Soai walking out from the area after he dispelled the darkness. I guess this is it. Hinata did warn us to not pick a fight with the new demon lord, but we didn't listen. Now look at me, dying in a forest alone. If only I wasn't arrogant. I just wish that in my next life, I will become stronger and less arrogant. she thought before she breathed her last breath. So I, who has finished his job, began to move to where Rimuru was fighting Hinata. If I hurry, I might be able to catch the fight of Lord Rimuru before anyone else, he said to himself before he disappeared inside his shadow. With Benimaru. Arnaud and Bacchus were seriously having a difficult time with Benimaru. They have been fighting and giving it their all against Benimaru, but he is simply shrugging off their attacks like it was nothing but an annoyance. Arnaud was holding his sword and breathing heavily while his body was covered in burn wounds, and Bacchus, who was holding his demon killer axe, was no different. This is getting us nowhere. We have tried almost every move we have, but he hasn't taken any damage at all, Bacchus said with irritation. I know how you feel, but do not lose hope. He may be a subordinate of Demon Lord Rimuru, but he is certainly not unbeatable. I will have to bring out my secret move in other to win, Arnaud said to him. Benimaru, who was casually observing them, decided to speak. I told you, don't bother trying whatever attack you have, because it will not work. My flames will burn whatever it is you throw at me. If you ain't gonna attack me, then I will simply end both of your life. Don't get cocky, bastard, Bacchus shouted before he leaped to Benimaru with his axe raised. Benimaru saw Bacchus approaching him with his axe raised. He admits that his axe is annoying if it actually hits him, since the axe is designed to slay demons and monsters. If it was the old him, then he would have been very worried, but the new him was way above this too in power. To demonstrate, he brought his blade, which was clad in black flames, and used it to block Bacchus' axe, but it didn't stop there. Bacchus' axe was severed in two the moment it made contact with Benimaru's sword. The force that Benimaru applied to his sword not only cut through Bacchus' axe, but also sent him flying through multiple trees until he crashed in the ground. Bacchus! Arnaud shouted before he looked at Benimaru with anger. You will pay for that. He discharged a massive light from his palm and it headed straight for Benimaru, but before it reached him, it was burned away in mid-air by an unseen force. Benimaru looked at him in anger. I told you that there is nothing my flames cannot incinerate. That is my conviction. Oh yeah. Try incinerating this, you bastard, Arnaud shouted at him. He brought his sword, which has been cladded in his fighting spirit and was glowing in 5 colors. Take my special move, 5 colors spirit virtuous sword. With a flash, Arnaud's sword runs along the ground in a line, heading straight for Benimaru. All paladins have mastered the art of combining their spirit elements into fighting spirit. Each knight all have 1 spirit elements, and sometimes they may have 2. But Arnaud was blessed with 5 different spirit attributes. By converting this 5 elements into fighting spirit and cladding it to his sword, he was able to develop a special technique that can cut through anything or anyone with ease. This special technique is why Arnaud was called the strongest holy knight. So, by using his spirits, Arnaud's sword was traveling at a speed that transcends the speed of sound. The strike was clad in holy attributes and it was heading to Benimaru. Arnaud was convinced that he was going to cut down Benimaru with this strike, but at the last second, Benimaru brought his sword that he has been charging with his mana and intercepted Arnaud's strike. When the 2 swords clashed, the holy elements that surrounded Arnaud's sword disappeared. No, more like it burned off. Arnaud had his jaw wide open from seeing his best skill stopped with such ease. Benimaru didn't give him any time to recover. With a huge burst of flame and a little bit of strength, he sent Arnaud, who was still clashing his sword with him, flying with a lot of flames. Arnaud was taken off guard and was sent flying till he hit his back to a tree. He slid down to the ground and looked at himself. He has several burns on his body and his right arm has been completely incinerated. He weakly looked at Benimaru. How did you block my sword? He asked the question that most puzzled him. Benimaru gave him a look that covered how stupid Arnaud is for asking him that question. Didn't I tell you this before? My conviction is that there is nothing my flames cannot burn through. Arnaud had no word to say after hearing that. His best and most prided technique burned away like it was nothing. This was beyond ridiculous and frightening. Before he could respond, Bacchus jumped from the air and fired multiple holy cannon at Rimuru. He did this to buy time for himself to escape with Arnud, but his attacks burned off before it could reach Rimuru. Don't think I didn't see you there just now. I was simply waiting to see what you would do, Rimuru said to Bacchus. Bacchus landed next to the down Arnud. We must flee Arnud. This monster is very much stronger than we are. We were all fools for thinking we could challenge the monster nation. Just look at the state you are in. We stand no chance at all. So we must flee. I agree with you, but you can't take me. I would only be a burden to you. You must escape without me, Arnud said to Bacchus weakly. Before Bacchus could respond, Rimuru said something that made them lose all hope. Do you really think I would let any of you to escape? I have only been playing around in Other to test my new powers, but now. A huge crimson aura covered Rimuru, which made him look more frightening. It's time to get serious. After he said that, he stretched out his right hand and a huge cocoon of fire appeared and covered both Arnud and Bacchus. Repent on the foolishness of challenging great Rimuru in the afterlife. And with that, a huge explosion of black flames consumed both Arnud and Bacchus in mere seconds. The attack happened so fast that those two died without knowing what on earth killed them. After that was done, Rimuru began to walk away from the scene. Some time passed and Cheyenne jumped to the cliff they were standing before with Rimuru. I'm the first to arrive. Keep telling yourself that, a voice sounded behind her. She turned around and saw Soai standing behind her. When did you get here, Soai? I've been here the whole time. My shadow was the one who did all the fighting, Soai answered her. Just then, Rimuru landed on the cliff. Looks I'm the last to finish. Yeah, you are. Was your opponent strong or something? Cheyenne asked him. They was definitely strong for human standards, but they were nothing compared to the new me. Anyway, how is Lord Rimuru's fight going? Rimuru asked. Lord Rimuru is still not taking both of them seriously, but that is about to change soon, so I answered. Both Rimuru and Cheyenne concentrated on the fight that was happening below the cliff they were standing on. This is a fight between their lord, Rimuru Tempest, and the leader of the paladins Hinata and her partner Ser. This is a battle that should not be missed. It will determine the fate of mankind in the future. And so for those who feel sorry for the paladin's death, don't worry, I still have great plans for them in the future. I won't spoil anything, but trust me and don't worry. Oh right. Can someone please tell me Hinata's last name in the comments? Thanks for reading, folks. See you in the next chapter. After Rimuru, Cheyenne and Soai have left to fight their own opponents, Rimuru faced off against both Hinata and Ser. Hinata, enhanced with her inhuman speed, appeared in front of Rimuru and tried to stab him, but he simply deflected her strike with his sword. Hinata, not losing momentum, started to exchange multiple slashes at Rimuru with the intention of cutting him, but like all her other attacks, Rimuru blocked them all with his sword. The force that Rimuru applied in his sword whenever Hinata clashed her own sword with his was so powerful that it almost numbed Hinata's hand. Hinata, who noticed this, jumped back to create some distance between herself and Rimuru, but Rimuru simply stayed at the same spot he was at the start of the fight. Not long after Hinata had jumped back, Ser rushed with his own sword and prepared to slash Rimuru at his neck while his guard was down, but his sword was stopped by Rimuru's multiple barriers before it could reach him. Ser was sent flying back from the force that occurred when his sword impacted with Rimuru's multiple barriers. Rimuru did not even look at Ser when this happened. He focused his whole attention on Hinata, and never did he remove his attention from her. Ser, after he regained himself, saw that indeed, Rimuru was not even acknowledging him as an opponent. This made him very angry. I will make you pay for underestimating me, he vowed to himself. Hinata also noticed this and was happy with the situation. She was happy because if Rimuru had his attention on her, then there will be no need for Sarah to die a needless death. From the little exchange that she had with Rimuru, she confirmed that he was miles above her in power. The difference was too wide for her to ever hope to match, but she will be damned if she could not at least scratch him before she lose. Rimuru looked at Hinata without any expression on his face. Is that really the best you've got, Hinata? I thought that you were supposed to be the best among all the holy church. Don't tell me this is your limit? Hinata knew that he was taunting her, but she will be lying if she said that his taunts were not getting to her. Ser gritted his teeth from being ignored. I will show you, bastard. He raised his sword high in the air and a huge mana began to pour from his body to his sword. He started screaming as a huge magic circle appeared in the air. Not yet. This is not nearly enough to finish a being like you, Ser shouted as he poured more mana into his sword. More magic circle appeared above the magic circle that was above Rimuru. Ser created multi-layer magic circle above Rimuru. The magic circle began to absorb magicules from the air itself. Particles of light began to gather inside the magic circle while the circle itself began to glow a huge multiple colors. You'll also like. Rimuru saw the magic circle above him and raised his sword in the air. Oh no, you don't. Ser, seeing what Rimuru was about to do, stabbed his sword to the ground. Immediately after he stabbed his sword in the ground, multiple portals appeared around Rimuru, both in the air and on the ground. Chains appeared from a portals that was surrounding Rimuru and began to wrap themselves around his body. The chains were specifically designed to bind spiritual life form and it simply cannot be damaged by anyone. These chains also possess the ability to suck away a target's magicules and skills the longer it binds the target. The stronger the target's magicules is, the tighter the chain will bind the target. This was the power that was granted to Ser when he felt helpless before Hinata's power by the voice of the world. Due to his desire to be the best holy knight in the world, he was granted this skill that allows him to bind anyone or anything, even true dragons. Nothing can break this chains once it binds a target. This skill was known as Soulbind because it not only binds the physical body, but the spiritual body as well. He has been saving this move for his rematch with Hinata, and he was certain that it could bind anyone, even someone as strong as Rimuru. There is no way for you to break those chains, Demon Lord Rimuru Tempest. These chains not only do their bind you, but it also drains you of your magic and skills. No amount of magic barrier can save you from them because it nullifies all types of magic and skills that it comes to contact with. You are finished, Demon Lord Rimuru. Ser shouted at him. Hinata had a gobsmacked expression from seeing the skill of Ser. She didn't know what kind of powers that those chains possess because her unique skill usurper could not steal it. But after hearing Ser's explanation, she began to have hope. Will this be enough to beat Rimuru? Those chains are powerful, but will it even be enough to bind someone as powerful as Rimuru? I hope this works, she thought to herself. Ser had a smug look on his face as he looked at the bonded Rimuru. This would not have happened if you didn't underestimate me, but it is too late for you. Let your arrogance that led to your demise be your lesson in your next life. Now take this, maximum holy disintegration. The magic circle above Rimuru began to glow more brighter and was about to release a powerful disintegration attack on Rimuru, but Rimuru, seeing this, began to release his aura from his body, which covered his surroundings in a purple mist. An attack like this is too weak to bind someone like me, Rimuru casually said to Ser. After he said that, to everyone's amazement and to Ser's dismay, the chains that was binding Rimuru broke into pieces. Ser had a dumbfounded look as he witnessed the impossibility before him, but his distress was only just beginning. Rimuru looked up at the magic circle above him. His eyes glowed a bright gold color, and immediately, the magic circle shattered into pieces. All the magic it was absolving a minute ago began to flow into Rimuru. Ser and Hinata could not believe what their eyes were seeing. Rimuru, not only did he break an unbreakable chain, he also destroyed a high-level disintegration spell, just by looking at it. This was beyond being overpowered. This was on the same level as gods. How did you break my soul bind? It has the power to bind even true dragons. The voice of the world said so itself, Ser shouted at Rimuru. Rimuru looked at Ser with an expressionless look. He raised his hand and pointed his finger at Ser, and the next moment, a super-condensed light laser attack shot out from his fingertip, and moving at a speed beyond light, it passed through Ser's brain. The attack was too fast for anyone to react against. It killed Ser in a blink of an eye without him even realizing how he died. Ser's body fell to the ground, and a pool of blood began to form where his body lay. Hinata, who witnessed all this, could do nothing but mourn Ser in her heart. She knew that this was not the time or place to mourn him, because if she was not careful, she would be the next to die. She gave Rimuru a wary look. Just how did you break those chains, and how did you destroy that magic circle? Rimuru smirked at her. Destroying that magic circle is easy, because I have already developed a counter for it after you used it on me on our first encounter. As for those chains, let's just say that I possess the power to rewrite the laws and nature of any reality and leave it at that. Though, those chains really took me by surprise. Its power was the real deal. If it had been anyone else who was bound by those chains, then they can be sure that they will not be winning that fight, Rimuru thought to himself. Worry not, Master. I have already copied the extra skill Soulbind. After some analysis done on the skill, I was able to combine it with your unique skill Spatial Motion to create a new unique skill, Void Time Cage. This skill has the power to create chains that can bind anyone or any entity from any known reality, timeline, or dimension. The new chains is now made up of the same properties as Master's body, which made it pretty much indestructible. So long as Master knows a target, Master can bind the target wherever he may be, regardless of the laws of reality or time. Rimuru now had deadpanned look on his face. That's Seal and her hobby of always creating overpowered skills for me. Well, she just wants to see me be the strongest, so I can't really be angry with her. Master is already the strongest, but I appreciate your kind words. After all, Master needs to be the strongest for what's to come. What do you mean, Seal? Rimuru thought in confusion. Nothing, Master. It's just your imagination. That line you always use when you don't want to be honest with me. Oh well. If it is something serious, I know you would tell me, Rimuru thought with a smile. Rimuru smiled and looked at Hinata, who was still looking at him with wide eyes. Hinata was completely lost on what to do. Rimuru just casually said that he has the power to rewrite the very nature of the world. How is she supposed to beat that? She didn't like saying it, but situations like this are why she thinks this world is so unfair to her. She has been training herself and sharpening her skills for 10 years straight, but some slime just appeared and somehow becomes a god in apparently 2 years. Yep, life was very unfair. She took the Dragon Buster sword that the clergy gave her and threw it away. After that, she drew her original sword that was given to her by Luminous herself, Moonlight, a legend-class blade. She activated her Holy Spirit armor that covered her entire body. She took a fighting stance and prepared for a battle that will decide whether she lives or die. She was no longer holding back anything. She was now prepared to give it her all or die trying. Rimuru gestured for her to come at him with his hand, and the fight resumed. Hinata moved at a very high speed and appeared in front of Rimuru and slashed him with her sword, but Rimuru deflected it with his own sword. Both began to exchange blows, with Rimuru mostly deflecting and Hinata attacking relentlessly with everything she had. Unlike before when Hinata was holding back, this time around, she can take a little bit of Rimuru's strength without her hands going completely numb. This just shows that she is holding nothing back. But even still, the gap between her and Rimuru was simply too wide. Hinata gave a frustrated grunt from seeing her slashes being easily deflected by Rimuru. She had even revved up her skill measure, which speed her mind thousands of times and allows her to predict skills and attack pattern of everything around her, but it still wasn't enough to phase Rimuru. She has nothing else to try, and she felt very cornered. Both continued to exchange slashes for a while until Rimuru disappeared from Hinata's sight and appeared right in front of her. The next thing Hinata knew was a knee pushing itself inside her stomach, which caused her to cough up a huge amount of blood from her mouth. She was sent flying back until her back hit a tree with a huge boom, which caused dust clouds to appear. Rimuru had just kneed her in the stomach, which sent her flying. Hinata weakly stood up and looked at Rimuru, who was still watching her every move. I guess nothing I have will work on him now. My only hope now is to use that move. Let's just hope it works, Hinata thought to herself. Are you ready to surrender, Hinata? I would like to end this fighting between us if at all possible, Rimuru told her. Hinata laughed a bitter laugh. To tell you the truth, Rimuru, I only came here to apologize to you about how I attacked you for no reason before. Rimuru had a surprised look on his face. Then let's stop this fight and talk it out. That is not possible. From seeing your subordinates on that cliff and the fact that I can no longer sense any of my comrades made me realize that they are all dead. I cannot quit when all of them gave their lives for my ambition. I have a duty as their captain to see this fight through to the end, Hinata said to Rimuru. Rimuru sighed and looked at her with a hardened expression. Have it your way then, but the next attack will settle this. Hinata gave a small and bright smile to Rimuru. I couldn't agree more. Something about her smile made Rimuru to lose all resentment he had towards her. The smile was pure, and it conveyed just the kind of weight she was carrying on her shoulders. Rimuru wanted to help her, but he knew that now is not the time for that. He readied himself for whatever Hinata is planning. Hinata began to gather magic heal in her hand that was holding her sword. This was disintegration spell, but she was gathering it all as glowing particles in her left hand, which was holding her sword. After she was done gathering it, she imbued her moonlight sword with the force she had gathered. Her whole body was now glowing a very bright light, with tiny particles shooting out of it. Here I come, Rimuru Tempest! Melt Slash! Hinata shouted as she moved at a superhuman speed that went beyond the speed she was moving at before. She was literally moving at light speed, and she was heading straight for Rimuru. A few moments later, Hinata's skill crossed paths with Rimuru, which resulted in a huge bright light that covered the entire battlefield. After the light died down, Hinata was seen standing in front of Rimuru with her body covered in many wounds and her light armor gone. She was totally spent and had nothing left except for her pride and dignity. She looked at Rimuru before her vision blurred and she began to fall forward, but Rimuru caught her in his right hand before she reached the ground. He gently laid her on the ground and watched her as she breathed in slowly. Rimuru could have cancelled her skills with the help of Seal and killed her in that moment when she was rushing towards him with that crazy powerful skill of hers, but he didn't. The look of determination in her eyes as she rushed him, knowing that this is her final moment, reminded him of Shizu. Because of that, he just couldn't bring himself to hurt her and instead took the attack head-on. The attack would have done a lot of damage to him had it been before he awakened into a true dragon, but now, it didn't even tickle, but something was off. Rimuru looked at his body and saw a very faint and shallow cut at the bottom of his clothes. The cut didn't reach his body, but it still damaged his clothes a little. He smiled and looked at Hinata with pride. From the moment the fight began, Rimuru had been reading Hinata's mind, and he heard her promise to herself that she would at least scratch him before she lose to him. He smiled at the kind of woman she had become. Shizu, you will be so proud of her if you can see the kind of woman she has become, Rimuru thought to himself as he watched the sleeping Hinata that was lying on the ground. Just then, Rimuru sensed something heading his way at a very fast speed. He activated his barrier and deflected the thing, which turned out to be a sword. He turned around and saw two people wearing white robes with hood which covered their head. The two individuals landed on the ground in front of Rimuru and kneeled. Benimaru, Soai and Cheyenne jumped down and landed behind Rimuru. The two people looked up at Rimuru. Greetings, Demon Lord Rimuru. We are as the 7 days clergy, and we are the faithful savants of our god Luminous. Rimuru nodded at them. The pleasures is mine. Now then, why are you two here, and why were you targeting Hinata? It's because Hinata has committed a grave sin against our god Luminous, and she must be published, one of the clergy said. And we have been charged with duty of eliminating her. So if you could hand her over, the second clergy said. Rimuru got angry with the tone they were using. He calmed his anger and looked at them. There is no way that is happening. She attacked my nation and she must answer for it. If you still insist on killing her, then I will take it up with your leader. For now, I want you two to leave my nation immediately, he told them. That's not going to happen, the clergy answered. I will inform you that if you go against us, you would be starting a war between our two nations, the second clergy warned him. Cheyenne could not contain her anger any longer. How dare you talk that way to Lord Rimuru? I'm going to make you two wish you didn't come here. She brought out her sword and prepared to charge, but stopped after Rimuru stretched out his hand in her way. Don't attack Cheyenne, because these two are mine to dispose of. I just received a thought message from Diablo. It seems that he captured two members of the 7 days clergy, and they were generous enough to reveal their whole plans after a little bit of torture from Diablo. Rimuru informed his subordinates. Rimuru looked at the two clergy with an angry expression. You 7 days clergy think that you are all smart, huh? You manipulated the paladins to attack my nation, knowing that Hinata will never abandon her comrades. You wanted me to fight Hinata and kill her because she was an obstacle to your plans, and you even framed the death of Rahim on my demon subordinate with the aim of having the masses on your side. You 7 days clergies have gotten too arrogant for my liking. I'm going to teach you two why you should never mess with me or my nation. The two clergy immediately jumped back to the air and looked at Rimuru like her was nothing. Ha. To think that you will find out about our plans, the first clergy said to him with a cocky voice. It doesn't matter though, because we don't plan on letting any of you survive, the second clergy said. Our preparations are complete. We know how powerful you are, Demon Lord Rimuru, but that was also factored into our plans, the first clergy said. We may not be powerful enough to defeat you, but we will offer up our lives to ensure that you and everyone here are killed, the second one said. Rimuru and the rest watched the two as they flew up and began their monologue. Rimuru saw the strength of this too, and although it is impressive when compared to humans, it was simply laughable when compared to any of his subordinates. Because of this, he wanted to observe and see what is giving this two the confidence that they could defeat him. Benimaru, Soai and Cheyenne, seeing that Rimuru was observing the two, decided to do the same and only attack when he gives them the signal. The two clergy raised their hand in the sky and a giant summoning circle appeared in the sky. Now come demons. We summon you to bring an end to this worthless nation of monsters. We offer up our lives along with the souls of all the monsters in the Jura forest as payment. Come out now and heed our summon, the two clergy shouted together. The magic summoning circle glowed in color before it slowly opened like a gate. After it opened, two individuals came out of it and descended to the ground. The two clergy fell to the ground and their bodies turned into dust and was blown away. Benimaru and the rest were on guard after seeing the two demons that was summoned, but Rimuru was calm. Rimuru looked at the two and saw that both of them were female, with the one to his right having yellow hair and the one to his left having purple hair. The purple-haired one was small like an anime loli and was wearing a dress, while the yellow one stood with confidence and was wearing a kind of female war uniform. The magic the two were emitting was beyond massive. It was on par with Diablo when he first summoned him. Are these two on the same level as Diablo? Answer. These two demons are archdemons and are the first generation of demons. So too archdemons. I'm not worried about fighting them, but it will be a pain if they're destroyed the forest during our clash. In that case, I have no choice, Rimuru thought to himself. Rimuru raised his finger and clicked it. The next moment, the two demons, Benimaru, Soai, Cheyenne and himself disappeared. There appeared in a world filled with nothing. It was covered in darkness due to having no sunshine, and it was filled with endless void. The world of void. The two demons became alarmed after looking around and not understanding where they were. Yo, Violet! Where the heck are we? The yellow demon asked. How should I know? We were summoned by those pathetic humans to wipe out a nation or something, and the next thing we know, we are here, the purple demon know as Violet answered. That nation you were summoned to destroy is my nation, and I won't let you do that. Who said that? The yellow demon know as John shouted. Both demons looked and saw three evolved orcs standing behind a beautiful silver-haired woman who was looking at them with an unreadable expression. Sorry for not introducing myself. I am Demon Lord Rimuru Tempest, and I won't let the two of you to do as you please. This is my private dimension that I created where nothing can escape without my permission, Rimuru told them. The yellow demon smiled. I see, a demon lord, huh? I've had my fair share of fighting you demon lords, and you ain't gonna be any different. She got into a fighting stance. So if we beat you, then we can leave this place, right? Sounds easy enough. The purple demon also got into her fighting stance. I wouldn't underestimate me if I were you. That arrogance might be your downfall, Rimuru told them. The two female demons began to generate a massive amount of mana as they prepared to engage Rimuru in a fight. So the fights between the Holy Knights and Rimuru have finally reached its conclusion, with Rimuru and his subordinates having defeated all the paladins who challenged him. Now, he is about to face off against two female demons who were summoned by the 7 Days clergy, all just to kill him. The two demons are very powerful and could give any of Rimuru's subordinates a run for their money if the two demons ever attacks them. Looking at them, Rimuru saw the aura the two demons were releasing, and he was impressed. The yellow demon has by far the highest mana he has ever seen, excluding those of true dragons. Mana was practically pouring out of her, which greatly impressed him. The purple demon was no laughing matter as well. True, her mana is nothing compared to that of the yellow demon, but the way her mana is shaped shows him that she has trained and refined her fighting spirit to the absolute maximum. If Rimuru should compare the level of her mana, then he would say that it is slightly bigger than that of Cheyenne's currently. Rimuru kept observing them before he saw that the two demons were ready to attack him, which puts him on guard. The yellow demon rushed Rimuru with an inhuman speed and punched him right in his face, but Rimuru stopped her punch with his finger. The yellow demon, seeing that her punch was stopped with such ease, became very confused, but didn't let that confusion slow her down. She covered both of her hands with yellow aura and began to punch Rimuru at an inhuman speed. Rimuru continued to deflect her attacks with his finger, which frustrated the yellow demon a lot. She jumped back and glared at Rimuru. What the heck is your finger made of? It felt like I was punching titanium just now, the yellow demon asked in frustration. Rimuru gave her a cold look and prepared to attack her, but... Notice. Death spell has been detected above you. Seal informed him. Rimuru looked up and saw the purple demon above him with a huge ball of death energy in front of her. She shot the huge ball of death energy at Rimuru, which was moving at a speed faster than sound. Rimuru didn't have time to block or dodge and just took the attack head-on. Before the attack impacted on Rimuru, he created a barrier that covered and protected Cheyenne and the rest from the death energy. He didn't want to risk knowing if they have resistance to such attack. Once the attack touched Rimuru, it caused a huge explosion that shook the area. After the explosion, a huge purple mist of death began to spread around the area. The purple demon landed by the side of the yellow demon. "Do you think that attack killed him?" she asked the yellow demon. "Only one way to find out," the yellow demon answered. The area shook again and all the purple mist began to gather to the center where Rimuru was seen with his hands stretched out. Rimuru had activated his skill Void God Azathoth and ate all the purple mist of death in the area. After he was done, he looked at the two demons who were still on guard. "You'll also like." That was Death Spell. A spell designed to kill the target regardless of his defense. "Sadly, that kind of power is useless on me," Rimuru told them. "Don't act so cocky just because you survived that attack. You are only a measly demon lord who thinks way too highly of himself," the yellow demon shouted at him. Rimuru ignored her and continued, "I have a proposal for the two of you." "Which is?" the purple demon cautiously asked. "I want you two to be my subordinates. You two are strong and would make a great addition to my nation." "What do you say?" Rimuru asked them. The two demons were surprised by the request and looked at Rimuru to see what his true intentions were. Finally, the yellow demon answered. "I will never serve someone who is weaker than me," the yellow demon declared. "We demons pride ourselves to being strong and having strong masters. If you want my allegiance, then you have to prove to me that you are strong enough to subdue me in a fight," the purple demon told Rimuru. Rimuru nodded his head at that. "I see. Very well, I will beat you two and prove to you how strong I am." The yellow demon got ready to fight, "If you can, that is." The yellow demon flew to the air to release her skill. She began to gather a massive amount of magic in other to release her strongest skill. The purple demon, seeing what the yellow demon was about to do, jumped up and flew in the air to observe the outcome of her fellow demon's attack. The yellow demon continued to gather mana until it was ready to take this, Gravity Collapse. Gravity Collapse is a spell that is created when the core of the magic black flame core is released and expands to produce the flame of destruction. By compressing the two cores, gravity collapse can be formed. Compression means that supergravity is created. The easiest way to explain it is that it produces man-made black holes. This disrupts the gravitational field of the planet, creating a localized supergravity field. Anyone caught in the influence of the hyper-compressed space will be crushed. This was the strongest spell of the yellow demon. The reason she used this move is because every instinct in her body is telling her that the being she is challenging is dangerous. She confirmed this after the little exchange she had with him and how he was blocking her with such ease. She knew in her heart that she can't win unless she brings out all the stomps she has at her disposal. Which is why she used this move on Rimuru. After she released her spell, gravity suddenly went haywire and the force increased. Anyone under its influence will be crushed, and Rimuru was no exception to this. Rimuru felt the force of the gravity suddenly increase around him. The force was overwhelming, and had it been anyone else in his situation right now, they would have been crushed under this force of power. But for him, it took a few seconds, but his body got used to the force and he remained standing. Rimuru looked up and saw that he was inside some kind of compressed space. If he should describe it in words, then he would say that he was inside a black hole. He saw all the energy in the space being focused on a single point. The energy was spinning and a supernova appeared on the ground where he was standing. No, the whole area was covered in this supernova. A dark pillar connects the heaven and the earth became hotter than the sun. What is this seal? Rimuru asked. Answer. This is a nuclear strike magic gravity collapse. It encompasses all magic and physical phenomena and is an all-attribute attack. It requires a huge amount of control to release this magic. The reason is because, if the caster loses control of the spell, the explosion that will resort can be considered as big as the Big Bang. That is one dangerous spell. Will it affect me in any way? Rimuru asked. Negative. While the attack is powerful, Master has multiple dimension barrier that surrounds him at all times, and this level of attack cannot damage the body of a true dragon. I see. In that case. Rimuru drew out his sword. He added a little bit of his power in his sword before he slashed. Cheyenne was watching the fight inside the barrier that Rimuru created. She was surprised when she saw the spell and the level of magicule it contained, but she believes in her master to prevail. Cheyenne, you have been quiet for quite some time now. Are you worried about Lord Rimuru? Benimaru asked her. Cheyenne turned to Benimaru and smiled. Do not worry about me. I'm just excited to see how our master will handle those two demons. He does want them to be his subordinates. So he won't kill them, so I said. Benimaru nodded his head. Indeed. Those two are very strong and their powers are on par with a true demon lord. It will greatly boost our forces if they joined us. Cheyenne became excited. That's what I thought too. Frankly, we are lacking on strong women in Tempest, and this too joining us will make it so that I'm not the only strong female subordinate of Lord Rimuru who can rival a true demon lord. What about Demon Lord Milim? She is strong and can rival Lord Rimuru if she gets serious, so I said. She doesn't count. She is the bride of Lord Rimuru and the future Queen of Tempest. It is our duty to protect her as well since Lord Rimuru said so, Cheyenne said. Enough, you too. It seems that Lord Rimuru is making his move now, Benimaru told them. They all watched to see what Rimuru will do. The yellow demon was observing to see the explosion that would occur as a result of her spell, but something unbelievable happened. A sound of glass breaking was heard, which was followed by a huge shockwave, which pushed her and everything else back. She looked on with a shocked look as her spell was broken into tiny pieces like glass. The gravity collapse was shattered into pieces when Rimuru slashed his sword. Not just that, the earth and the heaven were shaken by the force of his swing. The yellow demon was astounded by what she witnessed. A nuclear strike magic, destroyed by just the swing of this demon lord. This was beyond crazy. This level of power might be on par with Red. She was still staring at Rimuru that the purple demon had to shout to get her attention. Get out of the way, John. This attack will kill you if it touches you, she shouted at the yellow demon. The yellow demon turned and saw that the purple demon was releasing a huge amount of mana. She flew out of the way and observed. The purple demon released her spell, Hellflame. This is a purple fire spell that burns 10 million times hotter than the sun. This spell instantly turns anyone who it touches into ash regardless of whether that person is a spiritual being or not. It can even burn through a concept. A massive magic circle appeared in the air above Rimuru and released the flame on him. Everything in the area was turned into lava due to the spell. This spell is massively hotter than Benimaru's Hellflare, which is just an imitation of this spell. The spell deck ended on Rimuru, who was observing the spell. Void God Azathoth was all Rimuru said before the whole flames and the magic circle itself got swallowed by Rimuru. Seal began to analyze the spell that Rimuru consumed, which didn't take that much time for her. The two demons could not believe that a monster like this even existed. The yellow demon couldn't take it anymore. What the hell are you? How can you counter those two spells like that? She shouted at Rimuru. Rimuru smiled at her. Wouldn't you like to know? It doesn't matter what you did. That power of yours must have taken a lot out of you, the purple demon said to Rimuru. Don't get cocky, you too. That wasn't even a fraction of what I can do, Rimuru told the both of them. Both demons had a shocked expression on their face after hearing that. You are lying. And you are a deceiver, the yellow demon shouted at Rimuru while pointing at him. Rimuru smirked at them. Am I? Well, I will prove it to you then. This spell I'm about to use is something I just learned from observing that Holy Knight's air spell. I hope you both can withstand it. The two demons got ready and braced themselves for whatever Rimuru will do. Rimuru raised his hand and everywhere became bright. Lines of light began to descend from the sky and they were all heading toward the two demons. This is holy magic, which is a weakness to demons. Hope you both survive it, Rimuru casually told the two. The light got brighter until it covered both demons. The light was so bright that it not only covered both demons, but it also covered the entire area. After the light died down, both demons was seen lying on the ground with smoke coming out from their bodies. Rimuru approached the two downed demons and looked at them. Had enough? The yellow demon weakly looked at Rimuru. I surrender to you and accept you as my new master. The purple demon weakly nodded her head. Same with me. Rimuru smiled and raised his hand to both demons. Immediately, a bright light covered both of them, which healed all their wounds. The two demons were once again astounded by the powers of Rimuru. Truly, Master, is there anything you can't do? The yellow demon asked. Let's leave you two to figure that out. Now then, what are both of your names? The two demons looked at each other and looked at Rimuru. We don't have a name, Master, the purple demon answered. Yeah. People usually call me the yellow demon John, but that is not my actual name since I don't have any, the yellow demon answered. Rimuru nodded at this. If that is the case, then how about I give you two names? Truly, Master. We don't mind, but will it be all right? The purple demon asked. Don't worry about it. You two are now my subordinate, and as your master, it is my duty to name you two. Rimuru told them with a smile. The yellow demon smiled. Thank you very much, Master. Rimuru nodded before he spread out his wings and released his true aura of a dragon. The two female demons fell on their knees due to how overwhelming his aura is. Is this the true form of my master? This power is unreal. We never stood a chance, the yellow demon whispered to herself. He was only toying with us the whole time. Foo 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 foo. I'm glad I get to serve someone as strong as you, Master, the purple demon said to herself. Rimuru raised his hand to the two kneeling demons in front of him. Demons can't exist in the mortal world without a body or a vessel. That is usually the case, but not when I'm involved. A black aura came out of his hand and covered both demons. I am Rimuru Tempest, the fifth true dragon to ever exist. Bright light covered both demons as the both of them felt that their whole body was changing. It felt to them like their body was being reconstructed from scratch. I have recreated both of you and have granted the both of you the perfect body to use and serve me. Henceforth, the yellow demon will be known as Carrera and the purple demon will be known as Ultima. Serve me well from now on, my two demons. The aura surrounding both demons vanished and a huge amount of Rimuru's powers was bestowed on them. Both of their outfits has changed after the transformation and their magicule has gone through the roof. Carrera. Ultima. Both of them opened their eyes and looked at Rimuru with smiles on their face. We promise to serve you for all eternity, my lord and master, Carrera said to Rimuru. Likewise, my lord, Ultima said as well. Rimuru nodded and turned to Benimaru and the rest before he deactivated his barrier that was covering them. Benimaru, Soai and Cheyenne walked up Rimuru and the two female demon. Congratulations on your victory, Lord Rimuru, Benimaru said. I knew that you would win, Lord Rimuru. I never doubted you for a sec, Cheyenne said with excitement. Rimuru's sweat dropped from Cheyenne's excitement. Well guys, meet Ultima and Carrera, my new subordinates. Benimaru brought out his hand to Carrera. A pleasure to meet you too. My name is Benimaru and I am the chief of all military affairs of Lord Rimuru. Carrera shook his hand. The pleasure is mine, Benimaru. I'm Carrera, a demon serving my new lord and master Rimuru. Cheyenne went and hugged Ultima from behind. My name is Cheyenne and I'm the first secretary of Lord Rimuru. My, you are so cute. Why does she keep stressing the word first whenever she is introducing herself to people? Rimuru thought with a sweat drop. Ultima nodded. Thanks for the compliment. I'm Ultima and I will be serving my new lord from today. Okay guys, since the introductions are done, let us go back, Rimuru said to them. They all nodded their heads and Rimuru clicked his fingers, which transported all of them back to the forest. Rimuru and the rest transported back to the forest, where he left a parallel existence of himself to guard Hinata, who was still unconscious from fatigue. The parallel existence is a skill that Seal developed after analyzing dimension shift and cloning. She thought it would be useful to her master to be able to be everywhere at once, which is why she created the parallel existence for him. Rimuru, although at first, was not complaining since the skill is quite convenient, useful, and saves him a lot of time. Though, he crossed it as one of his overpowered skills in his collection. Upon arriving, the parallel Rimuru disappeared from his spot, leaving the original Rimuru as the only Rimuru in the forest. Rimuru walked up to Hinata with his subordinates, including Carrera and Ultima, following him. He knelt down next to Hinata and stretched out his hand above her, which started glowing with small particles of magicules flowing from his hand to Hinata. Soon after, Hinata opened her eyes and sat up with a surprised look. She looked at her body and found no injuries whatsoever on her body, and with all her strengths returned. She looked up and saw Rimuru next to her with the three orcs and some new people she did not recognize. What happened? I was certain that you were going to kill me. She didn't know why he was sparing her life. Rimuru stood up and walked to where his subordinates were. Believe me, I was, but I can't bring myself to kill Shizu's student. You may not believe me, but I don't want to be at odds with your nation or yourself. How can I believe you when you killed all my team and knights? Hinata asked him in a small voice. You guys attacked me first and I simply responded. Though, now I see that you and I were merely dancing to someone else's plans. Luckily for us, they are all dead now, Rimuru said to her. Just then, a huge force fell to the ground with a great boom which shook the forest. The two demons rushed to Rimuru's side and stood on guard, while Rimuru, Benimaru, Soa and Cheyenne remained calm. They have already sensed the person coming before she reached the forest. Hence, why they were calm. The dust cleared and revealed Milim carrying Luminous on her back. Milim dropped Luminous on the ground without a care and rushed to Rimuru and jumped into his arms, giving him a hug in the process. Rimuru, though surprised by the presence and state of Luminous, still returned the hug to Milim. What can he say? He truly loved this girl with all his heart. Carrera and Ultima, seeing that Milim was not a threat to their master, relaxed their guard and observed their master and demon lord Milim still hugging each other. Rimuru tightened his hold on Milim and rested his face at the crook of her neck and smiled. It hasn't been that long, but I still missed you so much. Milim, who had her face in Rimuru's chest, smiled in bliss. I feel the same way, Rimuru. I missed you more than you know. Rimuru separated himself from the hug and kissed Milim with all his heart. Milim closed her eyes and melted into the kiss in pure bliss. They didn't even realize that everyone was staring at them. "You'll also like." Carrera looked at the scene with a little interest. "I can't believe Milord was able to charm Demon Lord Milim Nava." Ultima nodded her head, same. They appeared to have strong and deep feelings for each other. They are engaged to each other and plan on marrying in the near future, Cheyenne told the two demons. Luminous stood up and dusted herself while looked at her wounds, which were slowly closing due to her small reserve at the moment. She looked at Hinata, who was staring at Rimuru and Milim making out. She sighed when she saw the blush on Hinata's face from watching those two. Hinata turned her attention away from the makeout session and looked at the state Luminous was in. She panicked and rushed to her side in an instant. "Are you okay, Lady Luminous?" "You are covered in wounds," Hinata asked her while panicking. Luminous sighed and looked at Hinata. "Don't worry so much about that, Hinata. It will heal in no time at all." Hinata nodded her head and stepped aside for Luminous. Luminous walked up to the Rimuru and Milim, who were still making out with each other. "I really don't want to interrupt you two, but we have some business with each other, Rimuru," she said to them. Rimuru, realizing that he and Milim had an audience, broke the makeout session. Milim pouted when this happened, but Rimuru assured her that they will continue this later by pecking her on the lips, which made her happy. Rimuru faced Luminous and raised an eyebrow at her appearance. "Luminous, what a surprise to see you in my nation. What happened to you?" Luminous' face changed to that of anger. "Why don't you ask your future wife over there? After all, she knows better on what happened to me." Cheyenne got a little upset after hearing the way Luminous was talking to Rimuru, but she kept quiet, knowing that she meant no harm. She will not disgrace herself here by jumping to conclusions over a little misunderstanding. She would not hear the end of it from Diablo if she did. Rimuru had a surprised look in his face before turning to Milim. "What is she talking about?" "Well, I saw a bunch of knights matching here in their full gear. Naturally, I got upset thinking that Luminous is planning to start a war with you. So I went to her place and beat her up with every intentions of killing her, but she kept spouting some nonsense about not being the one who gave the knights the order to attack your nation. So, I brought her here to confirm if she is telling the truth or not," Milim said with a proud look, expecting Rimuru to praise her. Rimuru didn't know what to say in this situation. His beautiful fiancée clearly did this for him, but she attacked Luminous, who had nothing to do with this. He sighed and gently hit Milim on the head. "Ouchie! What was that for, Rimuru?" Milim asked while rubbing her head. Rimuru sighed again. "Love, you jumped to conclusion a little too quickly. Luminous had nothing to do with this. It was all a plan devised by the 7 Days clergy who planned on using me to kill Hinata. Luckily, they are all dead now, so is all good." Milim had an "oh" look and turned away from Luminous, who was glaring daggers at her while whistling even though she's bad at it. Rimuru saw the look that Luminous was giving Milim and turned to her. "I'm sorry for the problems Milim might have caused you because of me. I hope you can forgive her." Luminous glared at her some more before she sighed. "It's not like I can do anything to her, and being angry with her will not restore my nation and bring back my people that she killed. Rimuru had an idea. How about I restore your nation and bring back everyone she killed as my way of saying sorry?" Luminous and everybody there looked at Rimuru with wide eyes. "What do you mean by that, Rimuru?" Luminous asked him. "Well, like I said, I can bring back everyone Milim killed for you and restore your nation as a way of apologizing on her behalf," Rimuru told her. "Do you have the power to restore life on those who have long since died and whose soul have been destroyed by the hands of your future wife over there?" Luminous asked him with caution. Rimuru smiled. "Something like that is child's play for me. So, do you accept? Luminous had no word to say to that. Rimuru just said that restoring and recreating a lost life is child's play to him. If that is not godlike powers, then she doesn't know what it is. Please do, Rimuru. I will greatly appreciate it, she answered him honestly. Carrera had a wide smile on her face. Is there nothing Milord can't do? At this point, nothing will surprise me anymore, Ultima said. Cheyenne smiled at them. There is absolutely nothing Lord Rimuru can't do. He is the greatest after all. Rimuru nodded at that. You two are still new to this, but this will only be the beginning of our Lord Rimuru great powers. Carrera had a wide smirk on her face. Truly. I'm glad I joined him now. Same here. I can't have someone weaker than me as my master, and my powers have tripled after he gave me my name. I will follow him forever because he is my master, Ultima said with a smile. Rimuru smiled from hearing the trust his subordinates had on him. He looked at Luminous. Well, let's begin. Please wait, Rimuru. Hinata said. What is it, Hinata? Rimuru asked her. Hinata knelt down in front of him and bowed her head to him. Can you bring back my fellow paladins as well? She pleaded with him. Rimuru thought about it and nodded his head. Sure, no problem. I will bring back all of them except for the one named Guard. I was informed by Diablo that he was part of the plans with the 7 days clergy. Hinata had no words to say except for gratitude. Your kindness is more than I could ask for. I am truly sorry for causing all this. Rimuru smiled at her. I too may have overreacted a bit, but it's okay. Raise your head, Hinata. Hinata stood up and went back to Luminous' side. Luminous smiled at her and took her hand. Hinata, being surprised because of this, made no movement of removing her hand from Luminous. Ayan, yes, I ship this too, and you will see more of their ships in this story. Rimuru turned to his subordinates and Milim. Please everyone, I want you all to step back a bit. Everyone did as they were told, with some like Milim, Cheyenne, Carrera and Ultima eager to see what Rimuru would do. Luminous and Hinata stepped back as well, not wanting to get in the way of whatever it is Rimuru might be planning. Rimuru, seeing that everyone has stepped back, closed his eyes and began to concentrate. A huge burst of mana came pouring out of him, which greatly shocked Hinata and the two demons. Hinata almost passed out, but Luminous protected her by covering her with her barriers. Now do you understand why I asked you to never challenge him in battle? Luminous asked her. Hinata nodded dumbfounded. I never knew he was holding back this much power. This power is beyond anything I've seen in this world. I know what you mean, but bear in mind that this is not his full powers, Luminous told her. Hinata had a shocked look. All this power, and you are saying he is still holding back? Most definitely. I know this, because this is not even a percentage of the power he was releasing when he fought Milim at the Walpurgis Council. Hinata could do nothing but accept the reality that Rimuru is way above and beyond anything a human or any being on Earth could achieve. Carrera and Ultima heard what Hinata and Luminous were discussing, and it only made them happier to being able to serve someone as powerful as Rimuru. Seal, I live managing the powers to you, Rimuru thought to himself. Live it to me, master. Due to the souls of the people of Lobilius being destroyed by Milim Nava, the solution will require to change the reality and the destiny of the victims with the ultimate skill, Lord of Fate. I'm counting on you, Seal. Rimuru used universal sense to sense the state of Lobilius and what to fix. He raised his hands as blue lightning began to spark around his body. Lord of Fate, Rimuru shouted. The sky darkened and a giant magic circle appeared in the ground, which covered the entire Jura forest. Then, the impossible began to happen, right in front of everyone present. Dust began to gather and take shape of people, and before long, the dust formed the paladins that were previously killed by Rimuru's subordinates. The land where the battles took place began to restore, and before long, the paladins opened their eyes and began to look around in confusion. The same miracle was happening in Lobilius as well. Everyone there had their jaw on the ground. They could not believe what they were seeing. Rimuru did not bring those paladins back to life. Oh no, he did something more insane than that. He recreated them and gave them new life. This was the power of creation that was only stated to have existed in legends. This made them to understand just how vast the difference in power between Rimuru and them were. Rimuru looked at his work and smiled. Hey Seal. Is there a reason why you didn't suggest that I use my other skill for this? Due to the nature of the energy turn null and how chaotic it is still under analysis and won't be available until after the analysis is done. If it is attempted to be used this early, it might end up destroying the world instead. I see then. Well, it doesn't matter since I still got the job done with my other skill. You just keep doing what you have been doing for me, partner, Rimuru told her. As you wish, master. The paladins looked around and saw Rimuru along with his subordinates and Hinata. They quickly stood up and looked at Rimuru with fear. What the heck is going on? Arnaud asked. We are just as lost as you are, Nud Bacchus said. I could have sworn I died. How are I still alive? Lytus asked. I don't know, but something tells me that Demon Lord Rimuru has something to do with it, Fritz said to her. The other paladins began to murmur amongst themselves because of the situation they found themselves in. Rimuru lowered his hand and addressed them all. I know all you paladins have some questions and I will explain it to you all. Yes, you all died, but thanks to the pleas of Hinata and your god Luminous, I brought all of you back to life. This whole situation was a plot made by the 7 Days clergy who wanted to use me and other to kill Hinata, but they are all dead now. Let today be a warning to you all, that you should never mess with my nation again or we will retaliate. The paladins looked at each other before they all lowered their head and shouted, Thank you, Demon Lord Rimuru. Luminous walked up to Rimuru. What about my nation? Don't worry, everything is fixed now. I brought back everyone who died in your country, Rimuru explained to her. Milim jumped at the back of Rimuru and hugged him from behind. My darling Rimuru. Is there anything you can't do? Rimuru smiled and turned around and hugged Milim to himself. Is nothing really. I may be this strong, but I'm not omnipotent yet. Milim released herself from the hug and looked at Rimuru with love. I don't care. To me, you will always be the greatest. She kissed Rimuru after that. After the kiss, Rimuru asked everyone to follow him back to town to discuss on the future relationship between Lobilius and the Jura Forest Federation. Laplace could not believe the nightmare happening before his eyes. He was in a cave located in Gustave along with the other clown troops. Yuki and Kigali was there as well. Yuki said he had a plan and it involved releasing a seal in the hidden cave in Gustave. According to Yuki, the being sealed there is said to be the god of everything and he made a promise to grant whoever that can release him immeasurable powers. The seal was very powerful, but thanks to Yuki's anti-skill, bypassing it was nothing more than child's play. Once the seal was released, that was when the nightmare began for Laplace and the rest of them. The being sealed there was not who any of them were expecting, and before they could react, the being disappeared and appeared behind Yuki and thrust her hand right into his heart from his back. None of them could react at all because the being began to release his massive aura which brought them all to their knees except for Yuki who was still hanging from the being's hand. The being looked at the dying Yuki in her arms. I must say that I'm shocked that you are the one who freed me from that accursed seal, Yuki. For that, you have my praise. Yuki weakly looked at being. What is going on here? How can they be two of you in this world? The being whose gender is female smiled cruelly at him. That is not your concern, Yuki. All you have to know is that I'm free, and it is all thanks to you believing in a stupid story I made up about granting power to whoever freed me. Goodbye, Yuki, and good riddance to you. Black flames came out of the being's hand and consumed Yuki, which erased him in a blink of an eye. The being turned to the others who were still kneeling. Now it's your turn to die. Laplace, knowing that this is the end for them, used all the powers he had to create a magic circle under Tyr, who was being crushed by the power the being was releasing. Tyr saw the circle and tried to look at Laplace, but couldn't. Laplace shouted with all his might, "You must go, Tyr, and warn Demon Lord Rimuru of the calamity that will be coming for him." Tyr, hearing the message, began to cry because she knows that this is the end for them all. Laplace activated the circle, which teleported Tyr away from the cave. The being saw everything that happened, but didn't care. She incinerated Laplace and the rest without batting an eye. Once that was done, she moved to the exit of the cave and looked around the horizon. She breathed in the fresh air around her and smiled. It's been a long time since I've been sealed, but I'm finally free. Now then, time to take my love Milim and kill Rimuru, because he is the only obstacle in my part. Though currently, he should be weak to face me, but it doesn't matter because he has something I want and I won't hesitate to take it from him, she said to herself. She stepped out of the cave and released her aura, which caused the sky to darken. I'm coming, Milim. Back in Tempest, no one felt the ominous power except for Seal. So the time has finally come. I sealed her before, and I will do it again. If she still wants to harm my master, then I will do what must be done, no matter how painful it will be. Seal thought to herself. That's it for this chapter. So Yuki, who we all thought was the main bad villain, is dead, and a new threat is awakened. I hinted on the new villain on chapter 25, and now we know that Seal have a connection with her. All I can tell you is that from here on out, this story will take a great turn from the novels because a lot of things are going to change, but not in a bad way, mind you. Anyway, thanks for reading and see you in the next chapter. Rimuru took everyone back to Tempest, where all his subordinates were eager to greet him. On his way to Tempest, he saw Veldora, who was at the entrance of the city gate, and he was waiting for him. Veldora saw Rimuru approaching and immediately rushed to him. Rimuru! Why didn't you inform me that you were going to battle? I thought we were friends, he said with a pout. Rimuru's sweat dropped from seeing the way Veldora was acting before sighing, "Come on, Veldora. I didn't call you because you would just go overboard and destroy the entire forest in the process of your rampage." Veldora had a dejected look after hearing that. That may be true, but you could have at least told me. Foo. Veldora, you have no control whatsoever when it comes to handling your power. I, on the other hand, learned to control my powers a long time ago, Milim said to Veldora while puffing out her chest. Ha! I have more control than you, and you know it, Milim, Veldora shouted at her. No, I have. After all, I was able to fight Luminous without destroying her in one punch, so there, Milim said with a huff. I don't think that is something to brag about, and Luminous looks very mad over there, Rimuru thought to himself. Indeed, Luminous was boiling in rage, but not because of what Milim said, but because of the mere sight of Veldora. The paladins were wise enough to shift and give her some space before she eradicate them with her aura alone. Veldora, who was still glaring at Milim, sensed a massive killing intent directed at him, which gave him a pause. He looked around and saw a silver-haired loli with a few scratches on her body, glaring at him. He was at first confused on who she was and why she was glaring daggers at him, but he later recognized her as the demon lord of the nation he blew up a long time ago. Well, if it isn't Demon Lord Milinus. What are you doing here? Are you here to see my greatness? Ha 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 ha, Veldora laughed, not realizing what he just revealed to the entire paladins. Rimuru face-palmed himself for the actions of Veldora and the headache it will cause him. Milim was shrugging her shoulders and saying things like, "At least I'm not the one to reveal it this time." The paladins were all surprised after hearing the true identity of Luminous being a demon lord. Wait! So our god Luminous is actually demon lord Luminous Valentine all along? Arnaud asked. I'm just as surprised and confused as you are, Bacchus said. Hinata! Care to explain this to us? Sarah asked Hinata. Hinata sighed before answering, "It's just as you heard, Demon Lord Valentine was just a stand-in for the actual Demon Lord that is Luminous Valentine. I confronted her when I discovered the truth and I was soundly defeated. She promised me that she will protect Libelius and her people, and I agreed to work for her in exchange." "But why didn't you tell us about this?" Lytus asked, with the other paladins murmuring behind her. Hinata coldly looked at all the paladins, "Because we wanted as few people to know about this as possible. If any of you had figured it out, I would have had no choice but to execute that person." All the paladin gulped after hearing that. They wanted to ask more questions, but the look on Hinata's face was saying that they should choose their next word carefully. Finally, Sarah was going to ask a question, but Hinata interrupted him. "Just so you know, Luminous means a lot to me, and I live to see her will fulfilled. If any one of you insults her in my presence, I will not hesitate to cut that person down," Hinata told them all. "You'll also like..." The paladins nodded their heads after hearing that. They wanted to voice out how what Hinata said sounds a lot like a love confession, but they were not suicidal enough to say that to her face. Luminous glared at the still laughing Veldora. "You evil dragon. Not only did you destroy my nation, but you even have the gut to forget my name. I will end you for this insolence." Luminous wanted to rush at Veldora, but she felt someone grab her hand. She turned around and saw that Hinata was holding her and was giving her a serious look. "Lady Luminous, I know how you feel, but you must remember that you are still recovering from the damage that was done to you at the hands of Demon Lord Milim. Please, you must save your strength," Hinata begged her. Luminous looked at Hinata for some minutes before she sighed. "I can never refuse you anything, can I? All right, I will calm down only because of you." Hinata smiled and nodded at Luminous, not realizing that she was still holding her hands. Luminous noticed this, but kept it to herself. "I'm very much serious about shipping this too in the story, and I'll be shipping more as the story progresses." Rimuru saw the hand holding but kept it to himself. He motioned for Veldora to stop laughing. Veldora saw that Rimuru was calling him and stopped. "Veldora, you should really read the room sometimes, Rimuru said with a sigh. Veldora had a confused look. "Did I do something wrong?" Milim shook her head. "Wow, Veldora. Even I'm not this ignorant of the situation." Rimuru saw that everyone has calmed down a little and sighed in relief. "Well, no need to keep standing here. As the leader of the entire nation of Jura, I welcome you to the capital city of the Jura Tempest Federation." Once he had said that, he walked inside the gate with Milim by his side, holding his hand, and following him from behind were Rimuru, Cheyenne, Swa, Carrera, Ultima, Luminous, Hinata, Ser, Ranard, Arnaud, Bacchus, Lytus, Fritz, and the other paladins. Once the paladins stepped into the city, they could not believe their eyes. The capital city of Tempest was very beautiful and well developed. Everything looked so neat and new, and the people were minding their own business with smiles on their face. The buildings were big, and some of them were as big as the building in Ingressia. What really caught their attention was the giant golden statue of Demon Lord Rimuru and Demon Lord Milim holding hand with smiles on their face. I bet a lot of you guys have forgotten about the giant statue." Hinata was the most shocked of all the bunch. She couldn't believe that this beautiful nation was what they wanted to destroy. She felt happy that they were stopped before they could carry out their plans. Carrera looked around the city with wonder. Wow, my lord. This city is really big and beautiful. May I be permitted look around? Rimuru looked at her and smiled. That's right. This is both of your first time here. Cheyenne. Please take both Ultima and Carrera around the city for a little sightseeing. As you wish, Lord Rimuru. Cheyenne answered like the perfect secretary. Really, master? Thanks a lot, Ultima answered like the perfect little sister character. Please follow me, ladies, Cheyenne told them as she began to walk away from the group. Ultima and Carrera followed her into the city. Luminous turned to Rimuru. I didn't ask this before because of all the drama, but that purple-haired girl is Violet, one of the primordial demon, right? Rimuru looked confused for a second, but he understood who Luminous was talking about. Oh, you mean Ultima, right? Yeah, she and Carrera are my new subordinates now. Luminous had a shocked expression. Why you've given her a name? Do you even understand who those two are? Hinata looked at Luminous. Who exactly are they, Lady Luminous? Those two are the one of the 7 primordial demon in existence. Their powers are said to be slightly lesser than that of an awakened demon lord, and they bring chaos and destruction wherever they go. To have acquired a name means that their powers are now on equal or above that of an awakened demon lord. Rimuru, how could you be so reckless as to name 2 primordial demons? Luminous asked with a panicked voice. The other paladins had a surprised look after hearing just who those 2 girls were. They could not believe that demons as powerful as those 2 were serving Demon Lord Rimuru. Though, they were not as surprised as they should be, considering that they all died and was brought back to life. Nothing else can shock them again as coming back from the dead. Rimuru looked at Luminous and answered truthfully. Those 2 were summoned by the 2 7-days clergy who came to kill both me and Hinata. They summoned those 2 as their last trump card. The 2 demons challenged me and lost to me. After that, they pledged their undying loyalty to me, and I accepted them and gave them a name like I do for all my subordinates. As for why I need them, I'm in a desperate need of a powerful army at the moment. Everyone became surprised and alerted after hearing what Rimuru said, especially Milim. What do you mean you need an army, Rimuru? Is there any trouble approaching or something? Milim asked him in a serious tone. Everyone listened as well to know what would make someone as powerful as Rimuru in need of an army. Rimuru raised both of his hands in surrender. Don't worry, Milim. I promise is nothing I can't handle, but a huge threat will be coming here in a few days soon, and I will need to be prepared for when it arrives. Depending on how things go, we might need to prepare for war in the coming future. Right, Seal? You don't need to feel bad, Seal. I already know that this threat will be coming for me. After all, I sensed it not too long ago, and I can feel your emotion was all over the place when it first appeared. I do not know who or what it is, but I know that the person is dangerous and that whoever it is might be stronger than I am. I know you are somehow connected to it and that you feel pain whenever you think of the person. How do you know, Master? Rimuru smiled. We are connected together, you know. I can feel all your emotions just as you can feel mine. So don't worry, I will wait until you are ready to tell me everything because I believe in you, partner. The new emotions that Seal was feeling was happiness and sadness at the same time. Happiness because her master still believes in her and trusts her, and sadness because she couldn't bring herself to tell her master the truth about what is going on. I promise to explain myself when the time comes, Master. I will be waiting, Seal. Everyone couldn't believe what they heard. Someone is going to declare war on Rimuru. Who could it be? Lord Rimuru. This is a matter of utmost importance. We should prepare at once for this coming threat, Rimuru said. That's right, Rimuru. No matter who that person is, I will take down anyone who tries to hurt my best friend, Veldora declared. You said it, Veldora. No one threatens my Rimuru and gets away with it, Milim declared with fire in her eyes. Rimuru smiled at the bond his friends and fiancé has with him. It made him very happy. Thanks guys, but you don't need to worry. The threat won't be coming here anytime soon, and I promise we will be ready for when it arrives. In the meantime, everyone must be tired, and since it's night time, why don't you all go to the hot spring and have a little soak to relax yourselves before we have dinner? Wait! You have hot springs here as well? Hinata asked with a surprised voice. What's that? Luminous asked. Lady Luminous. It will be better to see than to try to explain, but trust me, if it is like the hot spring I know of, then this will be a great experience for you, Hinata explained to her. Luminous had an intrigued look. Well, if you're that sure about it, then I'll trust you on it, Hinata. Rimuru nodded, and I forgot to mention, but the hot spring we have will help you to recover, Luminous. So take all the time you want in it. Now then, if you will all follow me. Rimuru took the group and they resumed their walk. On the way, different monsters will stop and greet Rimuru and he will wave at them. It became clear to the paladins on just the amount of trust and respect that the people and monsters in this town have on Rimuru. Rimuru took them to a giant castle. The size was out of this world and it was in one word, beautiful. The castle looked like something from a fairy tale. The paladins were surprised that a castle like this was in the city of Rimuru. This castle was beautiful and they acknowledged that fact. Even Hinata couldn't help but gawk at the sheer beauty of the castle. Rimuru sighed after he saw their expression from seeing the castle. The story of how castle was built is quite a funny one. So it happened after he returned from the Walpurgis. Diablo and Cheyenne insisted that their lord deserved to live in a castle befitting his status. Rimuru refused the offer because he preferred to stay in a modest house, but it didn't end there. Cheyenne went and informed Milim about their plan to build a castle for Rimuru and her, and Milim was all for it. Once Milim got involved, Rimuru had no choice than to accept the offer because he couldn't say no to Milim. The other subordinates heard about it and they were all on board with it. Rimuru asked Gield to clear a large part of the land, which Gield immediately did. After that, with the help of Seal, Rimuru created a castle from scratch using the sub-skill of his ultimate skill, Lord of Fate, which is reality bending. By controlling and manipulating reality with this skill, he can turn whatever he visualizes into reality. He created the castle with the intention of pleasing Milim, and he got a free hug and a lot of kisses after he was done, which he considers a win in his book. After the castle was made, every monster decided to party in celebration for the castle of their beloved lord. And that is the story behind the castle. Rimuru called for Cheyenne and she appeared along with a grinning Carrera and Ultima, who was eating a cotton candy. Cheyenne was able to appear thanks to Carrera and Ultima, who processed spatial shift. Rimuru gestured for everyone to look at him. Cheyenne here will show the ladies to the female section of the hot spring, and Benimaru will show the men to the male section of the hot spring. After everyone is done with their baths, the female maid goblins will take you all to the dining room where a feast will be waiting. They all nodded and began to enter the castle. Veldora has long since left the group to continue his reading in his room in the castle, which helped to calm Luminous down a little. The paladins entered the castle and were all once again shocked because of the sheer beauty of it all. Even Luminous was impressed by the beauty of the castle. Everyone admired the beauty as they were all led to their destinations. Rimuru took Milim's hand in his. Shall we go take our own bath, Milim? Milim tightened her hold on his arm and smiled. Let's go, darling. After everything I've been through today, I need a good long soak. Rimuru chuckled. Hey! You brought this on yourself for jumping to conclusions really quick. Milim pouted. And whose fault is that? I was only trying to look after you and this nation. After all, it's going to be mine as well soon. Rimuru smiled. I appreciate it, my love, and you got one thing wrong. This nation is already yours, you know. What's mine is yours, now and forever. Both looked at each other lovely before heading to the hot spring, holding each other's hand. You might be wondering why Rimuru and Milim were heading to a different hot spring together than the one their subordinates were using. Well, it happened when Rimuru was in the bath with Cheyenne, Shuna, and the other female goblins. Rimuru in his slime form was being sandwiched with both Cheyenne and Shuna boobs, and Milim was not at all happy about it. On top of her feeling dejected because of her small boobs, she saw her beloved Rimuru being sandwiched by other female boobs in the hot spring, and it made her upset. She declared that Rimuru should no longer take baths with other female except for her. Rimuru was at first surprised and sad for obvious reasons, but one look at Milim's expression changed his mind. The other female had an understanding look after hearing Milim's request. So, Rimuru was asked to make a private hot spring in their castle for whenever he wants to soak with Milim, which he did. And so, Rimuru was banned from ever going to the baths with any other female except for Milim, and he didn't mind because of his obvious love for her. Though, as a healthy young man or slime, he does miss being sandwiched by other girls' boobs. Back to the story, Milim and Rimuru entered their private hot spring and soaked themselves in the cool hot water. Rimuru turned to his slime form and enjoyed the sensation of the hot spring. Milim came to Rimuru's side and relaxed. Milim's face suddenly changed to seriousness, and she looked at Rimuru. "Can I ask you something?" she asked him. Rimuru looked at her and nodded. "Go ahead. If something is bothering you, you can tell me." Milim looked at Rimuru. "Ain't you worried that a threat that has enough power to kill you is heading here?" Rimuru sighed. "I will be lying if I said that I wasn't scared. This is the second time I've ever been threatened to this extent, and it frightens me. I got too overconfident after I got this strong, thinking that nothing can threaten both me and my loved ones again, but I was wrong. Even now, I can feel this threat and its powers. I don't know why, but it's like we are connected to each other, and its powers are bigger than I have ever imagined." Milim brought Rimuru and placed him on her laps. "Don't worry, darling. You know that you have me, right? I would rather die than to see a single hair on your head hurt by anyone, and if someone wants to harm us, then we will stop that person. When we are together, there is nothing we can't accomplish." Rimuru smiled. "You always know just what to say when I'm feeling down, you know." Muhahaha. "Of course I know, darling. After all, I am your one and only bride," Milim said with pride. "And the only bride I'll ever need," Rimuru said to her, which caused Milim to blush. "Back to what you asked, I've already made preparation for facing this threat, and it is almost complete. If the threat decide to attack, I promise to protect everyone from it." "I know you will, which is one of the reasons I love you so much," Milim told him. Milim then took Rimuru to the bathing section of the bath. She brought out a sponge and coated it in foams, and she looked at the Rimuru. "Allow your bride to have the honor of washing you, darling," Milim told him. Rimuru blushed but didn't object. "If you insist, but I will be washing you when you are done." Now it was Milim who blushed, but she didn't object. She began to wash Rimuru, and both began to have fun while bathing together, just like true couples would. After everyone had soaked in the hot spring, the female goblins who were serving as maids in the castle directed everyone to the dining room where an extravagant dinner had been prepared for them. The main dish was tempura along with fried chicken, seafood, hamburger and honey with bread for dessert, steak, croquettes and fried shrimp. Rimuru was very adamant on the type of food he likes to eat. So, he shared his memories of the different types of food from his old world to Shuna and the other cooks. The dining room was big, and it had a huge dining table fit for a king and his subjects in the middle of the room. Different varieties of food was laid on the table for everyone to enjoy. Rimuru and Milim took the two-seat meant for them at the head of the table, while Luminous and Hinata took the two-seat opposite from them. Benimaru, Cheyenne, Shuna, Soai, Carrera, Ultima, Veldora and Rigard were seated at the right side of the table, while Ser, Arnud, Bacchus, Lytus, Fritz and Ranard were seated at the left side of the table. The other paladins were being served their dinner in another room. Everyone was provided the appropriate clothes that suits this kind of dinner. For the men, they were wearing a simple black suit and the females were wearing an elegant dress. Rimuru and Milim were wearing a yukata fit for a very high-class rich man and woman. The other female goblins were standing at the entrance of the dining room as the perfect trained maids. Before they began the dinner, Hinata raised her hand and looked at Rimuru in a determined way. "Is there something wrong, Hinata?" Rimuru asked her. Hinata took a deep breath before she began. "I like to once again apologize for all the trouble we've caused you. What happened today, as well as the last time we met, was thanks to my poor judgment. Lady Luminous and my paladins had nothing to do with it. So if you can please forgive." Hinata didn't finish because Rimuru stopped her by raising his hand. Rimuru sighed. "Listen, Hinata. That misunderstanding is all cleared up and I bear no ill will towards you or your nation. I would like us to be friends, and if you could drop the prejudices against monsters, then all the better." Hinata didn't know what to say and she just nodded to him. "I know I'm asking a lot." Rimuru continued. "A monster, in essence, are virtuous creatures. If you believe that all of them are good without question and innocent lives are killed later by those same monsters, you have set yourself up as a failure. Maybe we could speak to each other, but it doesn't mean we have understood one another, but this country can make it work. Here, my people are giving humans a chance despite Cheyenne being killed by humans and Shuna and the others being hurt by humans. This country that I built is meant to bridge the hate between monsters and humans. Just as there are evil humans who you could even call monsters, there are also monsters that are just plain evil. If human can understand that not all monsters are evil and take time to talk and interact with the citizens of this country, I believe that we can come to an agreement and understanding." Rimuru explained his plans to them. "You'll also like." Shuna smiled while Cheyenne was smiling with a smug look. The paladins didn't know what to think after the explanation that Rimuru just gave them. It went against everything they were taught, but they could not deny that there is truth in what Demon Lord Rimuru had said. Hinata looked down to her food. "It's true that conversation is the first step to understanding, but it leads to some dangerous transactions. You run the risk of making commitment that bind you, heart and soul." "True that. But if you can at least not declare that all monsters are evil, we're totally fine with that. And if you have a monster that you don't like, we'll take them in. If human society can't accept them, they will be fine here," Rimuru told her. Hinata scratched her hair and sighed. "All right. I don't think our thoughts will change anytime soon, but I will prohibit my rank from condemning all monsters as evil. Is that all right with you, Lady Luminous?" "I care not for such matters. But if my citizens began to doubt their faith in me because of this, I will not stand for it," Luminous said while elegantly drinking her wine. "If that is your wish, then I will see to it as our first priority," Hinata responded immediately. Hinata turned to my subordinates and bowed with her head touching the table. "I must apologize to all of you as well. I promise that I will not treat any of you as hostile enemies simply for being monsters." The other paladins hurriedly followed her lead, shouting, "We're sorry." Together. "Please, think nothing of it," Rigard said. "Were it not for Lord Rimuru's orders, we would have considered humans our foes as well. I am just glad you aren't against us. I saw your battle with Lord Rimuru, and it made me curious to see who will come out on top if we both spared with each other," Benimaru said with a bold grin. Arnaud and Bacchus began to sweat bullets after hearing that. They both knew firsthand how strong both Hinata and Rimuru were, and both of them knew that a fight between those two powerhouses might destroy a nation if they were not careful. They both prayed to never have a front row seat of that fight. Rimuru turned to Cheyenne and saw her confused look. Cheyenne. She looked at him. I understand your pain and anger against humans, but try and understand that not all humans are evil. You have some bad guys and good guys. That's all there is to it. And monsters are the same way. You have to get a closer look if you want to understand humans. I see. Then I will judge the humans based on their intention and souls, just like you, Lord Rimuru. Cheyenne beamed, as if unshouldering a very heavy burden from her heart. Rimuru turned to Milim. That's all right with you, right, sweetheart? Milim looked at Hinata and shrugged. I really don't care about that. But if any of them tries to bring harm to you or our nation. She released a little bit of her aura, which to the humans and monsters in the room was quite big and scary. I will remind them why I'm called the Destroyer. The paladins gulped at the pressure Milim aura created, and the monsters were of a similar thought about how scary Milim was at that moment. Luminous stopped her drinking and looked at Milim, who was looking straight at her as she said that. She didn't want to admit it, but she was very frightened of Milim after the beating she gave her. She didn't want to look weak in front of all this people, but Milim's gaze was bringing back some of her buried emotions. Emotions she didn't know she still have in her. These were the emotions that she had buried after her encounter with Veldora's power up close, and that emotion was fear. Yes, Milim had made her remember the deep fear she felt when she first saw Veldora's powers and how insignificant she felt compared to him. She was about to lose her composure, but she felt someone grab her hand that was under the table. She turned and saw Hinata smiling at her. A smile which helped her to calm down and suppress her fear. All right, that's enough. Rimuru waved his hand and the pressure disappeared. The paladins breathed in relief from being freed from that dread. They vowed to never mess with this nation no matter what. Milim. There's no need to frighten them anymore. I believe that they all understand full well what will happen if they continued to be hostile with us, right? He turned to the guests. Of course, Demon Lord Rimuru. We would rather be on friendly terms than to be hostile with you, Arnud declared. The others nodded their head and agreed with him. Rimuru smiled. Good. Now, let's enjoy this lovely dinner before it gets cold. Rimuru said this because people like Veldora, Carrera and Ultima looked very impatient to start eating. Rimuru raised his golden cup to make a toast. Well, here's to the battles we've all fought and to our new understanding. Cheers! Cheers! Everyone said together. With that, the lovely dinner began in earnest. Our lovely maid came and poured drinks for everyone, and some of the paladins were even drooling at the maids. Everyone began to eat, and before long, the dining room was silent, with only the sound of utensils being heard. Rimuru looked up from his food and saw his subordinates trying to act like high-class nobles should, but were very uncomfortable and failing miserably. He turned his eyes to the paladins and saw that they too were trying and failing to eat like a high-class nobles. Only Hinata and Luminous seems to be the only ones eating with a calm look, like true noble women. He glanced at Milim and saw that she was eating as she normally eats and not noticing the awkward atmosphere in the room. He suspected that it was because she was looking forward to dessert, which was bread with honey. Rimuru sighed and clicked his glass cup with his fork, which got everyone's attention. I know that this might look like a formal dinner, but everyone here are acting way too out of character. Please. Let's leave the formalities aside for later and just enjoy the lovely dinner without all the stiffness. After Rimuru said that, the paladins all had a relieved expression before they began to eat without any formalities. The first to relax among them was Fritz, who took the opportunity to get his hand on the chicken laps he has been eyeing. Once the other paladins saw that, they too relaxed and began to chat and enjoy themselves. As for Rimuru's subordinates, Carrera was the first to relax and dug into her own food with a huge smile on her face. Ultima, seeing this, also relaxed and began to eat her food, but not as fast as Carrera was eating hers. The others also relaxed and began to chow down. Rimuru smiled from seeing the tension leaving the room. He felt someone grab his hand and he turned and saw Milim looking at him with a smile, which he returned before he too got back to his food. The next day. It was exactly 9 in the morning and Rimuru was in the new meeting room awaiting the arrival of Luminous and her people. The new meeting room was inside his castle, since it was decided that everything concerning the nation's affairs will be handled inside the new-built castle. After some time, Luminous entered the room, guided by 2 female goblin maids along with her people. Once they have seated, Rimuru began the meeting that will determine the future relationship between Tempest and Lobilius. On the right side of the table were Tempest's representative, which consisted of Cheyenne, Rigurd, and Benimaru, along with Rigurd, Rogurd. Those 3 were the government minister of justice, legislation and administration of Tempest. On his left were the representative of Lobilius, which consisted of Lewis, who appeared next to Luminous last night after the dinner they had, and the 6 top paladins. Rimuru had the paladins introduce themselves formally. There was Sarah of Blue Sky, former chief knight of the Imperial Guard. There was Vice Captain Renard, the Noble of Light. There was Arnaud of Air, the strongest of them all after Hinata, and under him was Bacchus of Earth, Lytus of Water and Fritz of Wind. At the head of the table was where Rimuru was seating, and next to him was Milim. Opposite them was Luminous, and seated next to her was Hinata. And with that, the proceedings began. Rimuru started by passing out issues that was affecting all of them to everyone in the meeting room. The meeting began with both sides explaining themselves to each other in order to understand what the root cause of the problem was all about. And that was the situation when we received the request from Archbishop Rahim, who was in Farmus at the time. Cardinal Nikolaus gave his approval, and I was all for it because I wanted to get back at you at the time, Hinata explained. Was that because of Shizu? Rimuru asked her. Hinata sighed. Yes, it was. I suppose I was just being used though, looking back. I don't know who is operating behind the scenes, but there are definitely Eastern merchant involved. Merchant, eh? I knew that Clayman must have been cooperating with merchant from other countries, but to think it was the East, Rimuru said. That's right. They told me that you killed Shizu and that you happened to be stationed at Inglesia. That why I took the initiative to kill you when I had the chance, Hinata explained. And you did a fine job at pissing me off. Just remembering that it's making me more angry, Rimuru while releasing a little bit of his dragon's hockey. Everybody in the room that was not Rimuru's subordinates began to tremble once they felt Rimuru's aura. They seemed to forget that Rimuru, despite how he may act sometimes, it's actually the strongest being in this kingdom or even the whole world. His aura was suffocating them and they were on the verge of passing out. Milim noticed this and turned to Rimuru. I know that you are upset, darling, but at this rate, they will all pass out if you don't control your aura. Rimuru looked taken aback and immediately controlled his aura, which brought great relief to everyone in the room. Sorry about letting my emotions to get the best of me. I will try to control it from the duration of this meeting, Rimuru informed them. You are well justified to be angry, Rimuru, but please control your aura next time, Luminous told him. Okay. Rimuru said before he resumed the meeting. Now that it is clear that the Eastern merchant is behind this, do we have any names? I know one. He called himself Dom, but I'm sure that's an alias, Hinata informed him. An alias, huh? We can pretty much guess that this merchant was connected to Clayman, and I'm willing to bet he and his people are the guys who set Farmus's King Admaris on us, too, Rimuru said with a sigh. No, there's no doubting that. We confirm as much when we questioned Rahim, Hinata said. Lord Rimuru, Do you think that the Eastern merchant wore Clayman's boots on the ground? Rimuru asked. Well, it's quite obvious, isn't it? Clayman was controlling Farmus from behind the curtain and not in a cooperative kind of way, Rimuru answered him. And I suppose I was just another cog in the machine, Hinata whispered with a clenched fist. In the end, it really doesn't matter. What matters now is that we can bet that someone we don't know is engineering all this, and this same someone was Clayman's boss, Rimuru informed them. Do you mean the person Clayman shouted before he almost self-destructed himself? Luminous asked. Rimuru nodded his head at her. What do you mean? Sarah asked. Do you mean that someone else is behind all this? Arnaud asked. The other paladins paid attention to hear what Rimuru has to say. Well, it looks like Clayman was doing the bidding of someone else himself, Rimuru informed them. That's true, and he refused to divulge this someone's identity until the very end. Impressive, I must say, considering that it was Rimuru himself who was questioning him, Luminous said to them. Oh my! Lytus said. Could this someone be the 7 days, my lord? Rigord asked. What? Are you accusing the 7 days clergy of taking action unbeknownst to me? Luminous asked with a raised voice while standing up. Milim, who was getting bored, looked at Luminous with a smile. Luminous, who noticed the smile, began to sweat and calmly sat down back to her chair. Milim still had the smile on her face, which was making Luminous very uncomfortable. Rimuru noticed the change in Luminous whenever she looks at Milim. It almost seems like Milim is her worst nightmare. I guess Milim must have really frightened her during their fight. I cannot fully deny the possibility, Lewis said. Luminous sharply turned to Lewis, her fear of Milim forgotten. What are you trying to say, Lewis? Lewis began to sweat and tried to calm his Lady Luminous, please listen to me. The 7 days clergy craved your affection so much, as I'm sure you sensed. How do you mean? Luminous asked. I am talking about the love energy, the energizing kiss you give in a special ceremony. The last time you did that for them, it was over 100 years ago. At one point, it was a weekly rite, but the intervals between them grew longer and longer over time, Lewis explained to her. Luminous had an unpleasant look. Yes, my eternal youth tends to make me forget, but they all were human. Without my energy, they may not die, but they would certainly grow old. Exactly. That was why they worked so fervently to ensure that no other favorites besides them ever appeared. Which is why they harbored a deep passionate hatred for Hinata, because she stole your affection all to herself, Lewis bluntly said. Hinata blushed after hearing that, but what Luminous said next made her want to die of embarrassment. Well, Hinata is mine and mine alone. I don't plan to share my affections with anyone else but her, Luminous said with a confident voice, not yet realizing the implications of her word to the paladins and every other person in the room. The paladins were wise enough to remain silent after seeing the glare Hinata shot at them when they wanted to question what Luminous said. The meeting continued like so, with everyone bringing in their own theories and idea on who the mastermind is. Eventually, it was concluded that Yuki is the likely suspect since he was the only one at the time who knew the truth about Shizu. Everyone agreed to be on lookout for any suspicious movement from the east. After that, the meeting moved on to the main agenda. All right. So about our future relationship. Do you agree to enter into a formal diplomatic relationship with us and to formally recognize our nation? Rimuru asked Luminous. I have no qualms with it, and I frankly rather stay on friendly terms with you than to be hostile, but don't expect our nations to become fast friends. You still harbor our nation's greatest enemy, the storm dragon Veldora. I will settle my score with him one day, but for now, we can call a truce, Luminous explained. If that is what Lady Luminous wish, then we will obey, Hinata said. The other paladins nodded their heads in approval. They were not stupid enough to believe that being hostile to a nation with 3 true dragon in it was a good idea. They have seen a glimpse of what Rimuru can do, and frankly, they did not want to ever be on the receiving end of such powers again in their second life. Rimuru smiled. I'm glad to hear it, and don't worry about Veldora. As long as I'm still here, he won't be going out of control. I'll hold you to it, Luminous said with a smile. Suddenly, Soai appeared next to Rimuru. Lord Rimuru, it seems we have captured an intruder. Everyone became on alarm, and Rimuru asked, who is the intruder? It is a member of the clown troops. The female who call herself Ter. She insists that she has an urgent warning she wants to deliver to you personally, so I explained. Rimuru stood up. Bring her to the throne room. I will be there shortly. So I nodded and disappeared. Rimuru began to leave the room with Milim and his subordinates following him. Do you mind if we come as well, Rimuru? Luminous asked. I don't mind. This might concern your nation too, since she might have the information we need, Rimuru told her. Luminous nodded and stood up and followed Rimuru and rest to the throne room. The paladins and Hinata followed as well to see what this is all about. Rimuru and Milim, with his subordinates alongside Luminous and Hinata, with the paladins, had entered the throne room only to see a pink-haired girl in a clown mask, tied up with strings, and was seating on the floor in front of his and Milim throne. Rimuru went and sat down on his throne with Milim seating on the throne next to him. His subordinates went and stood at his right side, and the paladins stood by his left. Luminous was seated at the seat that Rimuru created next to his, and Hinata and Louis stood behind her. So I pulled the string that was used to tie up Ter and dragged her closer to Rimuru. Rimuru looked at her and saw that her posture is that of someone who has given up hope. Rimuru coughed before he began. So you are Ter? A member of the moderate clown troops. Ter looked down and mumbled something which Rimuru did not get. What was that? I didn't quite hear you, Rimuru said to her. Speak up when Lord Rimuru is speaking to you, you wretch, Rimuru shouted at her. Ter became frightened because of the power that was emanating from Rimuru. She began to shake from fear because of it. Rimuru saw this and sighed and turned to Rimuru. Rimuru, control your aura and let her speak. She can't talk if you frighten her like this. As you wish, my lord, Rimuru said before he suppressed his aura. Rimuru turned back to Ter. Now what were you saying before? Ter swallowed the lump in her throat before answering. I said that I was a member of the moderate clown troops. Rimuru nodded his head. I see. What happened to you then? Did they kick you out or did you leave on your own? Ter sighed and looked down. It's not because of that. They were all wiped out, leaving me as the only survivor by a single enemy. Everyone had a surprised reaction from hearing this. The paladins, who didn't know who this clown troops were, stood aside in confusion. Cheyenne and the rest were pissed because they wanted to be the one to end those clowns, and someone beat them to it. Luminous laughed at hearing that. Ha 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 ha. This is so funny. Was the clown that killed my servant Roy among those that were killed? Ter looked at her in confusion. Who are you? I am Luminous Valentine, the god of Lubelius. Now answer my question, Luminous said to her in anger. You'll also like. Ter, not wanting to make an enemy with her because of her overwhelming power that was pouring out from her body, answered immediately. Yes, he was. Then they should count themselves lucky that I wasn't the one to find them first, because I would have given them a fate worse than death, Luminous told her with no emotion whatsoever. Ter bowed her head and continued to look at the floor. Milim looked at Ter. I am curious though, how did you guys manage to get yourselves killed? If I remember correctly, you guys were small fries compared to me, but at least you could put up a decent fight against Clayman or Carrion or even Fry. Rimuru looked at Tear. Who was your leader, and how did you guys meet your end? Tear bit her lips in frustration before she sighed. Our leader was the Grand Master of the Freedom's Guild, Yuki. Everyone had a shocked look from hearing that, especially Rimuru and Hinata. So it was Yuki that was behind all this. That idiot is lucky that he is dead, or I would have done him in myself, Hinata said in anger. No way! So it was the Grand Master Yuki, after all. Arno shouted. We had our suspicion, but to think that it was true, Sir said. Just what could he be after to have done all this? Lydas asked. Rimuru sighed and looked at Tear. I can't say I'm surprised because I already had my suspicion, but it's still shocking that I was right. Having exchanged a quick attack with Yuki, I've estimated how strong he was, and I must say that he was pretty powerful. He might be as strong as Hinata over there, or even stronger. So, who was the one that took him and the other clown troops down? Tear looked at Rimuru and saw that he was completely focused on her. Ever since Rimuru and the others had entered into this room, she has been able to sense everyone's overwhelming power. Even though they are suppressing their powers at the moment, she could still tell how strong a person is with the scent of their aura. But with Demon Lord Rimuru, she got nothing. His aura was that of an adventurer and his posture is that of someone who is still a beginner, but every cell in her body is telling her that he was the most dangerous person in this room. Her whole body felt like he was watching her every move, and if he wills it, she could just disappear in a blink of an eye. Just like the person who killed all her friends. He truly was a catastrophe to the world. The bringer of chaos. Are you going to answer Lord Rimuru, or are you going to sit there all day? Cheyenne said to her in anger. Talk or else. So I said to her while pulling the strings a little tighter on her. Tear nodded her head before she answered. It wasn't a person, nor was it a monster that took down my friends. It was a god. Everyone had a confused look after hearing that. What do you mean a god? There is no god in this world besides our own god Luminous or the true dragons, Arnid said to her. Which god might you be referring to, because there are so many godlike beings in this world? Hinata asked her. Tear looked at everyone in the room. I do not know how powerful this godlike beings you speak of is, but the god I speak of is on a whole other level compared to those wannabe gods. Her power were immense and divine. We didn't stand a chance against her. It was over in a blink of an eye. We read in an action scroll about a celestial being who will grant whoever released her from her seal immeasurable powers. Don't tell me that you people actually managed to release that seal. Luminous shouted while standing up. Rimuru turned to Luminous. What's this about Luminous? Luminous turned to Rimuru. There is an action scroll about a god whose power is greater than all beings in this world. The scroll says that whoever is able to release the seal of this god will be granted powers greater than anyone in this world. Many had tried to release this seal, including myself, but the seal was impossible to break. Eventually, the tale was forgotten and became a myth. Everyone digested this information that was given to them. If the seal was so powerful that not even you could break it, how did this clowns manage to break it? Rimuru asked. That's what I want to know too. How did you clowns manage to pull it off? Hinata asked. Tear looked down. I can't say. I swore to keep that power a secret even if it costs me my life. Rimuru looked at her and thought, seal. How do you think they managed to pull it off? The only skill that could break that seal is anti-skill. It is a unique skill that has the ability to nullify all skills and magic in existence. I believe that the one named Yuki Kagurazaka was in possession of such skill. That skill sounds dangerous. Would it have affected me? Worry not, Master. Your powers is way above and beyond that of a measly unique skill like that. Rimuru smiled from hearing that. Rimuru's subordinates became angry when Tyr refused to answer and were going to attack but stopped when Rimuru raised his hand. Rimuru returned his attention back to Tyr. It was anti-skill, right? Tyr looked up to him with a shocked look. How did you? Rimuru smirked at her. Don't underestimate my intelligence. This anti-skill seems to have the power to nullify any and all skills and magic, right? That's how Yuki was able to break the seal. Everybody had a look of understanding after hearing that. Tyr, on the other hand, looked down and sighed. You really are dangerous, Demon Lord Rimuru. I'd just like to be ahead of my enemies in any situation. Rimuru told her. Now, what is the name of this god that wiped out Yuki and the rest of the clown troops, and how strong is she? Everyone paid close attention to hear what her answer will be. Tyr looked up at Rimuru before she answered. In terms of strength, I think you are the only being alive who can face her in a fight. As for her name, it is. Tyr tried to say her name, but an unseen force closed her mouth. She couldn't speak no matter how much she tried. I think that's enough revealing about me, don't you think? Wouldn't want you to spoil the fun for me. When I had just arrived, a voice said to the whole room. Everyone immediately became on guard. The paladins immediately rushed to the front of Luminous and drew their weapons, while looking around the whole room with Hinata being in the front. As for Rimuru's subordinates, they all stood up and rushed to the front of both Milim and Rimuru while releasing their aura and preparing for a fight. Carrera and Ultima immediately appeared and moved to the side of Rimuru, while also being on guard. Rimuru brought out his sword and coated it in black flames while also being on guard. The only people in the room who remained calm was Rimuru, Milim, and Luminous. Suddenly, a black portal opened behind Tyr and in came out someone who had literally left everyone in the room speechless except for Rimuru. The person that came out was a female who has blue sliver hair. She has golden eyes and is holding a fan in her hand. She is wearing a kind of kimono and a golden accessory in her hair. She was the epitome of beauty, just like that of Rimuru. Everyone were lost for word on what or who they were seeing. It's this real? How can she exist? Luminous asked in shock. I don't know what is going on, but if she is whom we believe her to be, Renard said, then all hope is lost, sir. Completed for him. The other paladins were just as lost as the others. Rimuru could not believe his eyes. Lord Rimuru, is this real or am I seeing an illusion? Carrera shook her head. This is no illusion, Rimuru, but it still does not explain her existence. Ultima looked at the newcomer with shock as well. This level of power is ridiculous. She isn't a clone, is she? Cheyenne had a pissed-off look from seeing the appearance of the newcomer. How dare you take on that form and approach this place with it? I will make you regret taking on that appearance. She drew her big-ass sword and rushed to the newcomer with it. She jumped and prepared to cut down the newcomer with her sword, but the newcomer simply waved her fan and Cheyenne fell to the ground in front of her, leaving cracks on the floor. Cheyenne tried to stand up, but an unseen force pinned her to the ground, with multiple cracks appearing on the floor. The newcomer sighed, impatient as always. Cheyenne, I've told you many times to not charge an enemy recklessly without first analyzing their powers. Everyone was shocked at how easily she was able to take down Cheyenne. This cleared their doubt on the identity of the intruder. Finally, Rimuru stood up and walked to the front of his subordinates. Can I ask what your name is, and can you please release Cheyenne from the ground? The newcomer smiled. Cheyenne is not my target for coming here, so. She snapped her fingers and Cheyenne disappeared and appeared behind Rimuru with a confused look. Everyone looked at Cheyenne, then back to the newcomer with a frightened look except Rimuru. And for my name, I think everyone here knows it by now, the newcomer said. That cannot be because I'm here and you shouldn't be in this world, Rimuru said to her. I think we both know how I came to be here, but if you must hear my name from my mouth, it's Rimuru Tempest, but call me Rimu for short, the newcomer whose identity was revealed to be Rimuru said. Everyone digested what they heard. As hard as it was to believe, this power, this aura was unmistakably that of Rimuru Tempest. Rimuru looked at his female self. Okay, Rimu. Why have you traveled through dimensions just to come to this dimension? Rima looked at Rimuru with a sweet smile. The answer to that is simple, of course. I came here to take Milim by any means necessary. This answer shocked everyone once more, especially Milim, who was still shocked from the moment the person stepped into the room. What do you mean? Milim shouted while standing up. Why would you want me? If you are Rimuru from another place, then there must be another me there, right? It's a long story, but I'm willing to tell it to you, my love, if you still want to hear it, Rima said to Milim with a charming smile that only Rimuru could pull off. Milim blushed after seeing that smile, which made Rimuru angry once he saw her blush. Rimuru turned to Rimu with an angry look. Milim is my fiancée, and I will not let you have her. If you still try to take her, then you will answer to me. Rimu smiled at that. You are indeed powerful compared to any other Rimurus I've fought before, but you are still not on my level. Seal should have told you that before I arrived. She did, but it doesn't matter to me. I'm well aware on how powerful you are since you are me, but if you think that you can win against the current me, then you are sadly mistaken. Rima's smile grew at that. Make this interesting for me or you might die, she said as she released her aura. The whole forest of Jura began to shake from how dense the aura is. Everyone in the room could not believe that this kind of power existed. The paladins began to shake in fear, and some like Frizz and Lytus began to wet themselves from fear. Tyr stood up and ran with all her might to the side of Rimuru's subordinates, who were too distracted to notice her. Rimuru's subordinates began to tremble because this power was bigger than anything they have seen their master release before. This power was on a whole new level compared to that of the power they sensed from Rimuru when he fought Vildora. Milim looked shocked and scared because this power was stronger and denser than that of her own power. Luminous swallowed a lump in her throat because the power she is sensing is bigger than anything she has ever felt before in her life. Safe to say, everyone in the Jura forest became paralyzed with fear because of the amount of aura that was being released. Just then, another aura equal to the one from before appeared and covered everyone in the whole forest. This aura began to cover everyone in the whole Jura forest like a mini barrier to protect them from the harshness of the other aura. Everyone turned to Rimuru, who was standing there with his sword drawn, and they knew instantly that he was behind the second aura. Rimuru looked at Rimu and smirked. Like I said, don't think you can beat me that easily. Rimu was at first surprised before she smiled. This is good. To think that you can match this level of power, and from the looks of it, it doesn't seem like you have even used half of your powers. You are way beyond that of a true dragon and on your way to supreme territory. You are the strongest Rimuru I have ever encountered, and I would love to fight you to see who is stronger between us. Enough talk. Rimuru rushed her with tremendous speed, but Rima managed to block Rimuru's sword attack with her fan. Both of them began to push each other to try and overpower the other. It's time to see who is stronger between us, both said at the same time. So the new villain has been introduced. This female Rimuru will be the new antagonist in this story, and later down the line, it will be revealed why she became like she is now. So many of you might have guessed before that she is the big threat that killed Yuki and the other clown troops, but I like to keep things a surprise for my readers. Who do you think will win between our beloved Rimuru or his female version? You will know in the next chapter. As always, thanks to everyone who read and liked this story. Your support is what motivates me to write this story. Hope you all enjoyed this chapter and see you in the next one. As both of them clashed with each other, both of them began to exchange slashes at a very fast pace. Rimuru slashed at Rimuru, but she deflected it with her fan before she counter-attacked, which Rimuru will block. Their movement were a blur to those who are trying to watch the fight. Rimuru sensed that their fight will destroy his castle and immediately jumped back and disappeared using space shift. Rimuru was at first surprised, but she smiled and disappeared also, leaving everyone else in the room in a state of shock and confusion. Luminous turned to Milim and asked, "What happened?" "The sound just stopped. I couldn't see because they were too fast for me to see." Milim stood up and changed her outfit to her normal attire. Rimuru didn't want to destroy his castle while he fights that other female version of himself. He teleported outside the city, by the side of the exit of the Jura forest. Rimuru looked at the others. "We must go and assist our lord in this fight." Carrera looked at Rimuru like he was crazy. "Do you seriously think that any of us can fight on our master's level? She may be a different person, but she is still Lord Rimuru. Which means, she is just as strong as our master. But we can't let Lord Rimuru fight her alone, can we?" Cheyenne asked with an angry voice. Cheyenne is right. "We can't stand here and do nothing while Lord Rimuru fights her alone," Ultima said. Hinata looked at the monsters as they were debating. "Do you think any of you will stand a chance against this person? She has the exact same powers as Rimuru, you know." "That may be true, but we have to try at least," Rigard said. Milim sighed and looked at everyone in the room. "All of you should shut up." Everyone in the room became quiet after Milim said that. They all knew not to anger Milim at this moment because she is the most worried of them all right now. "None of you can fight her because, as much as I don't want to admit it, she is powerful, even more than I am. Only Rimuru can face her now. If you guys go now, you will only be a burden to Rimuru." All of Rimuru's subordinates looked down in frustration because what Milim said is true. In short, they were all weak. Milim smiled. "Do not fret. I will go and give Rimuru the support he needs." Rimuru was the first to react. "No, Lady Milim. If anything happens to you, Lord Rimuru will be very upset." "Muhahahaha. Don't worry so much, Rimuru. I won't lose that easily, and besides, I want to ask her some things about what she said earlier about me," Milim told them with confidence. The others nodded their head at Milim. Milim smiled and took off to the direction of where Rimuru is. Rimuru turned back to the others. "We may not be able to fight, but we can at least be there if Lord Rimuru needs us." "Yeah," the other subordinates of Rimuru shouted together before they all ran out of the room, leaving just Rimuru with Luminous and the paladins. "What will you do now?" Rimuru asked Luminous. Luminous stood up. "I will go and watch this battle between those two." "I will accompany you, Lady Luminous," Hinata said. "I will follow you as well, my lady," Lewis said. Hinata turned to the other paladins and asked them to stay here unless they want to die a second time, which they all agreed without question. "You'll also like." Rimuru nodded and turned to the tied-up Tyr, who was still sitting down on the floor. "You stay here too, and don't even think about running away, or you will be sorry," he said to her. "I don't plan to anyway. I can't break out of the strings, no matter how much I try," Tyr told him. Rimuru nodded and ran out of the room to go and join the others. With Rimuru and Rimuru. Rimuru appeared in the air above the Jura forest, and not long after, Rimuru appeared next to him. "Good thing you were smart enough to move our fight away from the city," Rimuru said to him. "Of course I will. Do you think I want you to hurt any of my citizens?" Rimuru asked her. Rimuru sighed. "You forgot that we are the same person. I want Milim and will do anything to get her, but I'm not about to go and slaughter our people just to do it. You haven't actually explained to me why you want Milim in the first place. What happened to the Milim from your dimension?" Rimuru asked her. Rimu's face changed to that of anger. "I think we've talked quite enough. don't you? I am curious on how powerful you are compared to me. Rimuru readied his sword, might not want to believe it, but I'm confident that I can match you in whatever you dish out. Rima grinned, it's that what you think? Just to let you know, I possess all skills in existence. Still think you can win? Rimuru had a shocked look before he shook his head. All the skills in the world means nothing to us. You should know this already. After all, you are me, right? True, but it doesn't change the fact that I'm still the stronger of the two of us, Rima told him. Less talking and more fighting, Rimuru said to her. I'm counting on you, Seal. I will do my best, Master. Rimuru had a worried look from hearing Seal's response. He couldn't blame her, though. She is being forced to assist him in fighting himself. This must be tough for her, who values my well-being above any other thing in the world. If it becomes too much for you, Seal, you could always seat this one out. No, Master. I must see this through to the end. All right then. Are you done talking with Seal? Rimuru asked him. That's none of your concern. You should be more worried about this fight, Rimuru said before he rushed at her with a speed that was beyond that of light and prepared to slash her. He slashed her, but she deflected it with her fan. So impatient you are. Sad to say, but that attack will not work on me. Rimuru applied power to her fan and used it to push Rimuru back a few feet. Let's see how you handle this power, Rima said before she opened a black portal in front of herself, and a black chaotic energy shot out from it and headed to Rimuru. Rimuru saw the energy and dodged to the side as the energy passed him and hit a part of the Jura forest. What happened next was destruction beyond imagination. Rimuru watched as that part of the forest was literally wiped out from this world. It's not like it only exploded or anything like that. It exploded and got erased from existence. That power is dangerous, and he had a suspicion on what it is. He turned to Rima. What kind of power is that? Rima smiled, seeing the destruction that was turned null energy when it is being controlled and managed properly. So you have control over it then, Rimuru said to clarify. Yes, I do. I've had years to practice and control that power. Now what will you do? Rimuru asked. This Rimuru raised his hand and several chains came out of thin air and wrapped tightly around Rimuru. Rima was surprised and tried to break the chains, but she discovered she could not. Not just that, she felt her power was gradually being drained by those chains. What is this? She asked in anger. That's my void time cage. It has the ability to bind any entity regardless of the laws of reality and time. This now is an experiment to confirm a theory I had, Rimuru told her. Rima looked confused. And what theory is that? You claimed that you have all skills in existence, but you had no idea what skill those chains are. It made me to understand that you may possess all skills in your world, but you don't have the skills that I created in this world. Like this one and many of my other skills, you do not possess those because it isn't part of the skills that was granted to me by the voice of the world, which is connected to all dimensions. These skills are personal to me because I created them myself, and it is not connected to the voice of the world, Rimuru explained to her. Rima looked shocked after hearing that. Are you claiming that you have more skills that I don't know about? Exactly. I have something like this. Rimuru raised his hand, and the area that was destroyed and erased before began to fix itself. It looked like it was being recreated back to the way it used to be. Rima looked at the spectacle before her in shock. She turned to Rimuru, who still had his hand raised. What power is that? It almost looked like you were reversing time, but that's not it either. Rimuru brought his hand back and looked at Rima. That was a secret technique of mine that I don't feel like sharing. All I can say is that I have the ability to bend and control any reality to my will. Rima looked at him like he has grown a second head. Don't just casually say that you can control reality like it's a walk in the park. And even still, it still does not explain how you were able to restore something that was erased by negative energy. I'm just being honest, and like I said, I can control reality. Anything I visualized becomes my reality and that of others. Though, it seems to have its limits since I've been trying to visualize a reality where you get erased, but it's not working, Rimuru told her. Well, of course it won't work on me. In case you haven't noticed, I'm an existence that is above that of a mere ultimate skill, Rima told him with a calm voice. Rimuru looked at her calmly. You are pretty cocky for someone who has been caught by my skill. Oh, this. I was just enjoying our conversation with each other. If I wanted to. Rima released a small dark energy from her body which erased the chains that was binding her. I can get out of those chains like it's nothing. Rimuru sighed, not like I wasn't expecting that, but it is still shocking that you can break those chains easily. This nihility energy is starting to become a pain. Rima smiled. Let's continue this elsewhere, shall we? What do you? Before Rimuru could finish his question, Rima clicked her fingers and the world stopped. Everything became frozen in the world. Funny enough, Rimuru himself was also frozen with this power. What the heck just happened to me? Why can't I move? Answer. This is time stop. Everything in this world has been frozen in time. With Master's physical constitution, a countermeasure will be set in 3, 2 and 1. After Seal's announcement, Rimuru regained back his movement, but the world was still frozen in time. Rima looked at Rimuru moving in a stop-time world and smiled. Not that I wasn't expecting you to move, but it took you quicker than the other Rimurus I've faced. Rimuru looked at her with a slight frown. Didn't think you would stop time. That is a cheat move and you know it. Well, I couldn't let those guys rushing here to see this fight. And those spies from Dwago are really too close for comfort. I don't want my powers to become known to the world just yet, Rima defended herself. Rimuru sighed, not that I don't understand what you mean. Oh well. Let's get back to our fight. Not so fast, Rima raised her hand to stop Rimuru. I'm sure you know that if the both of us fight for real, that this world will be destroyed. Rimuru looked at her. What do you have in mind? Let's take this fight someplace else. Rima clicked her fingers and both she and Rimuru appeared in an exact replica of where they were before. Rimuru looked around and turned back to Rima. Where is this place? This is an exact replica of your world that I created just now. We can rampage all we want and not worry about anything, and in the real world, time is still stopped, so no one will notice our absence, Rimuru explained. Rimuru nodded. All right then. No need to hold back anymore. He released all his power that he was storing, which was quite massive. Rima looked at the display of power in shock. I can't believe that you are only a true dragon and you are already this powerful. Your powers are equal to my own, but I won't lose to you. Let me show you the difference between us. She released her own powers, which caused a crack in the sky from the amount. Many cracks began to appear in the sky and the ground due to the level of powers both of them are releasing. Rimuru coated his sword in his aura and slashed at the direction of Rima. The force created a giant wind blade that cut anything on its paths. It was very fast, but it did not reach Rima because a barrier appeared in front of her which blocked the wind slash. Rima raised her hand and multiple black portals opened around Rimuru. A huge amount of nihility energy began to form in the portals and was released at Rimuru at a speed beyond speed itself. Rimuru, who has thought acceleration that raised his thinking and perception speed by 1 trillion, saw the attacks coming at him. Azathoth, he shouted. Immediately, a black portal that looked like a black hole opened in front of Rimuru and began to suck away all the turn null energy, including the portal that created them. After that was done, Rimuru raised his sword in the sky and the weather changed to a darker stormy cloud. A powerful lightning shot down from the sky and headed for Rimuru. Before the lightning could reach her, a black portal similar to the one that appeared before in front of Rimuru appeared and sucked away the black lightning. It seems that Rimuru had activated her own Azathoth, which ate the black lightning. Rimuru began to gather a massive amount of energy in her hand for an attack. Rimuru saw this and began to gather his own energy in his hand for his own attack. Both of them prepared to shoot the energy they have gathered at each other. "Take this, Dragonova!" Rimuru shouted and shot a condensed Dragonova that was bigger than Milim's at Rimuru. Blast it all away, Dragon Cannon! Rimuru shot his own attack that he developed during his fight with Veldora at Rimu's attack. The two attack met and the explosion that occurred literally destroyed the replica Earth. Not just the replica Earth, but other nearby planets were obliterated as well. Once the explosion had died down, Rimuru and Rimuru were seen floating in the galaxy looking at each other. The both of them looked as though the explosion from earlier never happened. Neither of them have any scratch on them, which was almost ridiculous considering that the replica planet was destroyed from the explosion with them inside it at the time. Since magic and skills won't work, Rimuru said, readying his sword. Then it's physical attack, it is, Rimuru said while also readying her fan. "Prepare yourself!" Both shouted before rushing to engage each other in an intense physical battle. Rimuru was able to control his turn null energy and imbued it to his sword. With turn null energy mixed in his sword, Rimuru is now able to slice through any attack or defense of anyone with ease, since his sword will eat away at any kind of attack. He dubbed this move Imaginary Blade. He used this move to slash at Rimuru, but she blocked it with her fan and returned her own attack, but Rimuru dodged it. The reason she can block the Imaginary Blade is because Imaginary Blade is the mixing of turn null energy into a sword, while Rimu's fan was created by the nihility energy itself. Her fan is the essence of the chaotic energy, and Rimuru's sword is the fusion of the chaotic energy to a material object. When this two objects clash with each other, we will have a destructive stalemate, which is the current situation now. Rimuru and Rimuru continued their fight for complete 7 days and 7 nights, with neither of them getting the upper hand in the fight. On the 8th day, both of them were standing on the replica moon looking at each other. Their clothes were in shambles, but their energy level was just as high as it was in the beginning of their fight. No! It has doubled because of their bodies, which are constantly absorbing magicules from everything around them. The both of them prepared to continue, but something happened that stopped them. A crack appeared on the atmosphere and Milim smashed through it and entered the replica world. She was wearing her battle armor and holding her world-class sword. Milim looked around and saw Rimuru and Rimuru standing in the moon. "There you are, Rimuru. I've been searching for you." She flew down next to the surprised Rimuru. Rimuru and Rimuru had a shocked look on their face from seeing Milim. They didn't think that anyone would be able to enter this world, let alone Milim. "How did you enter here, Milim?" Rimuru asked her. Milim smiled when she saw that Rimuru was all right. "It took me a lot longer than I thought to get to you. I was rushing to assist you in your battle, but I suddenly got frozen in time. It took me 3 days for my body to adjust to the frozen time, but I was able to move after it did. I began to search for you, but your presence have completely vanished from the world. I then remembered the engagement ring you gave me, and the energy you imbued in it because you wanted to know my location at all time. I traced back that energy to your location, which took me a long time to pinpoint. Once I did, I used instantaneous movement to get to your location but was stopped by a powerful barrier that was blocking anything from entering into that world. I used my full power and was able to smash through the barrier and enter here," Milim explained to him. Rimuru could not believe what he heard. What she did may sound easy, but it was more complicated than that. First of all, how did Milim have teleportation skill? Of course Seal is the guilty party. When and why did you give her that skill? She requested that I give her a power that will allow her to instantly move to your location wherever you may be. So I created that skill and gave it to her. I see. But how did Milim know of your existence? It happened on the night of your engagement. When you two were going at it with no intention of stopping, she was able to sense my presence during the intercourse between you two. Ever since, she has been asking me to teach her some things on how to be a good wife, and I've been very helpful. Rimuru blushed from being reminded of his and Milim's passionate night together. And I hope none of you seriously thought that our two favorite lovebirds will get engaged and not do anything to each other. If you thought nothing happened between Rimuru and Milim at the night of their engagement, well, you are wrong. Something happened, a lot of somethings, but I will leave it to your imagination. Rimuru sighed and turned to Milim. Not that I'm not glad that you are here, but you shouldn't have come. She's on a completely different level from anything you've ever faced, Rimuru told her. I don't care. Milim brought her sword in front of Rimuru and took her battle stance. If she thinks I'm going to stand by and watch her try to kill my future husband, then she has another thing coming. Rimuru looked at the situation and sighed. Rimuru, let's postpone our fight for next time. As much as I want to take Milim, I know that you will get in my way if I tried. And I can't bring myself to hurt her in any way. Milim got angry. Don't underestimate me. She rushed to Rimuru with a great speed and prepared to slash her, but her sword was stopped before it reached Rimuru. Milim was confused on what stopped her sword before she looked, and what she saw made her jaw to drop. Not just her, Rimuru also had his jaw on the ground. In front of Milim, blocking her sword, was another Milim with dull blank eyes. This new Milim applied force to her sword and released a shockwave that sent Milim back to Rimuru, who managed to catch her in the air before she hit the ground. The new Milim. The new Milim turned to Rimuru and kneeled while bowing. Master, I came as soon as I sensed your presence. What are your orders? Rimuru looked at the still shocked Rimuru and Milim before she answered. We're done here. We are returning back to our place to plan on how to deal with this, Rimuru. As you wish, Master, the new Milim said before she stood up next to Rimuru. Rimuru looked at the new Milim, then back to Rimuru. What is she? Her appearance may be that of Milim, but she is most definitely not Milim. Rimuru smiled at him. Apologies, but I have to get going. If you really want to know, then ask Seal for answers. I'm sure she will be more than happy to tell you. Rimuru then clicked his fingers and a portal opened behind her and the new Milim. Until next time, Rimuru, and you too, Milim, she said as she walked into the portal with the other Milim following her. The portal closed after both of them has walked through. Rimuru turned to Milim, who was in his arms. We've got a big problem, don't we? Milim sighed. We both can never get a break from all this stress. Who do you think that other Milim is? I can sense that something is wrong with her, but I don't know what. And her powers were massive. Rimuru shrugged. Heck if I know, but I'm certain we will get our answers when we return. Let's go back. Milim buried her face into Rimuru's chest. Sure, she mumbled. Rimuru carried her bride style and walked into a portal that he created, which connects to their original world. And thus, the fight was temporarily postponed for a later date.